G, and I'm here with Jonny and Abssi doing the Best Gaming Podcast number 410. 410.
Let's go.
What's the pot
10 more,
slang?
dude.
420, right?
10 more. Oh my goodness gracious.
Yeah. 410. We're going to talk about Liza P, Mortal Kombat, Starfield, Baldur's Gate, reviews. What else do I got here? Nintendo event, Sony event, Unity. There's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, actually.
It's been a crazy week, man. Oh, Final Fantasy remake. We're going to talk about that.
Ooh,
What's it called? What's the new one called? Rebirth. We're going to talk about that as well. So a bunch of stuff. If you get a chance, tweet it out. Thanks for the super chats. All that kind of stuff helps the channel continue to put out videos, even though this week, I think I've done 0 videos. Everything fell apart in my plans to do reviews, which, it happens. Good. Gang. Yeah, it was good. It actually gave me a little time to play.
And October is coming quick, man. You got a lot of work there.
Yeah, a little rest time isn't so bad, right? A little time to just sort of sit back. I mean, I can honestly say I wasn't incredibly disappointed. I wanted to review a couple, but there was some, I'll talk about the review embargoes for some of these that were really weird. And I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to play some games, hang out in the Discord.
And you had some time to play some more Starfield, right?
Yeah,
I think.
a bunch more. Yeah, a bunch more. And just, we did like 4 voice chats in Discord. We did the yesterday's events, and the last couple days we've been doing huge get-togethers, just talking about life and generally finding out where everybody's from. It's always fun to go into Discord and we just saw somebody who said they're from Australia in here, but it's like a couple days ago I started asking people where they're from, and it was just like pick a random spot on the map and somebody was there. And it was so cool to be like, man, when I was in school, I only had 3 kids to talk to, and it was always Nintendo versus Genesis. Yeah, it's awesome.
Dude, when we talked to Chris Face a while ago, and he was from like South Africa.
Yeah, it was great. Did you play Forza Motorsport Preview? No, I didn't get to go on the trip. I still don't really travel too much with a couple immune compromised people that I know and I hang out with, especially when my parents are super old. And we're talking about just even colds. The couple times I've gone to those big events, I've come back with like pox or some kind of evil disease. And when I see my parents who are sort of ancient, I'm like, it's probably best to not like bring something back.
Speaking of evil disease, I got this like free sample can, right? And it says it's kombucha, but sparkling.
Oh,
it's bursting with 3 billion kombucha cultures, and it tastes absolutely nasty, but I'm still gonna drink.
I appreciate you mentioning that it tastes nasty, because like whenever I talk to somebody about that stuff, they're like, oh yeah, absolutely love this shit.
Great.
I'm like, nah, I don't think so, man. I think you're lying. Let's talk. What have we been playing? What have you guys been playing? What's everybody in chat playing? Let's talk about current games, then we'll move on to the new news. You guys been doing what? Starfield, Baldur's Gate?
Yeah,
Starfield, both of you?
Yeah, I'm completely done with Baldur's Gate and only Starfield now.
Wow. Okay. And you the same, right, Abssi? Because I think I see your Starfield pop up.
Yeah, I'm literally just playing that. I'm not playing anything else.
Man, that is so interesting to see that some people it's grabbed to the point of just absolute stickiness. It is one of the stickiest games I've ever seen on our Discord.
Yeah, the reason I'm only playing that, usually in games, I have a game that I play when I just want to play the game and be immersed and all that stuff. And then I have a game to play when I'm watching podcasts or doing other things or want to listen to music. But with this game, there's like 2 sides of it. So like I spent like 10 hours just like surveying planets and like collecting minerals and shit.
Right.
Like going to random POIs, and I would like watch something while I do it. Mm-hmm. Or I just engage in a lot of quests and stuff. I have a lot of quests. My quest log dude has like 20 quests there, or 30 even. And so when I want to do that, I just focus on quests. So
right.
Yeah, that's why it's fulfilling both those sides.
You've been messing around with the shipbuilding, or are you more just exploring and mining?
Yeah, I just unlocked Class B ships, but I need to increase my ship design perk so I can attach some cool shit to it. But right now it slaps, man. I got some auto turret lasers on them, and it literally just fucking melts shields. It melts steel beams. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's crazy. It's ever since I got that, I was like, damn, the ship combat really clicked, and I was like, oh hell yeah, I want to do more of that. Yeah.
Go ahead, Jonny. What were you gonna say?
No, I realized my problem why I wasn't liking the space combat was because I was using the starting ship.
Oh,
And no
I
matter
see.
like how much I upgraded it, it just
Mhm.
felt like this unmovable box,
Right.
like, completely useless in combat.
Also, there's a speed where maneuverability is increased.
Yeah,
no,
right
I
in
know,
that middle
but it was
spot.
still terrible.
Yeah,
and
it is terrible.
the damage
Yeah.
was disastrous.
Yeah, you're just sort of petering away at enemies
Yeah,
when
like,
you know,
pew,
yeah.
pew.
Yeah, when I look at sticky games, Ghost of Tsushima, all those other kinds of games, Baldur's Gate included, I didn't know some games are not sticky where they're really big for a small amount of time and then they move on and there's no issue with that, and that those games are many times hyper successful. Forbidden West was that way, where it was in and out. And people loved it who were playing it, they were in, they were out, and you didn't hear talk about it. Where maybe the first one I heard more talk. But this is the first time where when I look at the Discord, the patron Discord, and look to the right, and it's just Starfield. And it's so interesting because I get that some people didn't like it, some people did, but the number of people who've stuck with it and played it, and even if they have issues and they're like, I don't know what it is, but man, I really dig this. It's exciting. I wish there were less of the little negatives for sure, but
Yeah.
it's good to see them do well, and hopefully very quickly we'll get DLSS patched in. I know they said they were working on it, but because mine crashes. Oh, Mark Smith says Diablo 4 drop off was real. That is true. In our Discord, Diablo 4 was big for like this.
Yeah,
Dude, on
maybe
Twitch
a
it was
week?
getting less viewers than Artifact, the Valve game that never succeeded, that people stream random shit on. It was bad, man. It was like in the under the triple digits, sometimes, dipping into the 2 digits, man.
So moving on
75
to some really weird news is Unity. So the Unity engine decided that they were going to start charging people. You guys read some of this, right? With Unity and how they're rolling out proactive, like retroactive as well, and they're going to charge the companies for the number of installs over a certain number.
Did you hear what they said about piracy?
No, I heard they said that they had some way or something. There was something.
They were
soft.
like, they believe that with their method, people won't be able to pirate those games, but they didn't give a definitive statement on the installs of pirated games not affecting the fees that are charged. So that's really sus, because even in less developing countries, dude, those pirated games get sold in the million, like a lot. That's their main way of getting a game. They just get sold on discs for like $2 a piece. So that's a disaster if it actually. I think they're gonna walk it back, to be honest.
By the way, the Cult of the Lamb developer said on Twitter he's going to delete it, but then later said it was a joke. So I don't know if that's true or not, but I did see a post saying that it wasn't actually, that they weren't, it was a joke, which is a bad time to joke
as well.
Yeah. But you look at this, and there's games that are free. They're on Unity. I mean, Unity has based itself on, hey, what's up, Game On Ansa? There's been all these guys who were like, hey, we got free games, we got this, we got that. And when you look at Unity, that's what their claim to fame was quick iteration, turnaround time, ease of use, not connected to the Unreal stuff. It was its own thing. And they basically went,
especially for independent developers.
Right. And they went and said, let's reverse all of that.
So each download, or like when someone installs your game, right?
Yes.
You, like the developer would pay, I think it was some like 20 cents or something, which adds up massive,
a lot.
Right?
Yeah, it's one of those things where you look at it. By the way, Game On, I did, I don't know if you saw my response. He bought the orange shirt for ACG, and he DM'd me on Twitter. He's like, dude, this is the brightest shirt I've ever seen in my life. Like there's a picture of him that he sent me, and it's like a neon shirt. But I appreciate you rocking it, man. That was awesome. And go check out his stuff. I've been jumping into his streams as often as I can. He was doing the Ascent, which I hadn't returned to in a long time. And I was watching him play the Ascent, going, this fucking game looks so good. It out cyberpunk. Like the game
Dude,
is
they even
just,
have shit in the game, like details that you wouldn't see in the camera
Yeah.
in the game, right? Where you'd have to
Yeah.
install a third party software.
Yeah, that's what
to
I
be
did
able
with
to
the
see that
Walking the
stuff,
Walk
yeah.
is you're just like looking and you're seeing all this shit going on in that game and you're like, dude, this game is wicked, man. Like it's so wicked. But going back to Unity, yeah, so you've got all this stuff with Unity, you've got the charges. We don't, there's a possibility that they'll roll it back, but I do think that this is a different threat than all the other threats we've seen from companies trying to do something. This is where a bunch of people who don't get any money or whatever are going to suddenly owe bills for you. Like, I just have a feeling everybody's going to be, we're just going to have to move. Like, there's no trust anymore for them.
Yep.
And I agree.
Well, there are games right now mid development that are doing that. They're doing exactly that. They're moving the whole game to a new engine.
Slay the Spire
too, right? It's a lot of work. You have to train devs as well, and it's not an easy maneuver.
Yeah, man. It's sad when you look at it because we've always had engine battles, and for a while there was this awesome time where it's like Unreal's rolling out a thing where they're only charging really popular games. And it's free any other time. And you're like,
good use cases.
They both, exactly. They both, and even I, who don't like most Unity games, there's almost always something wrong with the Unity game. But Unreal has shader stutter, so it's not like they're not without their. But I was all excited for Unity because I was like, oh, quick iteration, you can turn something around really quick. You could even give a game publisher an idea of what type of game you wanted to make, and then Unreal was getting better and better with that kind of stuff. And then these guys turn around and do this, and you're all, wow! You
and
just
it's part of the
.NET
ecosystem, which is very powerful. You know what I mean? Very scalable.
Yeah, so, and a lot of PR people that I've talked to and publisher people are just warning their developers. I don't know if you guys saw, but I believe it was Devolver Digital said, if your plan is to use Unity, please contact us first. And I was all, oh man.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, the damage is kind of done, right? Even if they walk it back, like you say, the trust is broken. But also, some people have already taken steps to move away from it, right?
Man, it has to be part of a pump and dump scheme, dude. I don't believe it's not part of a fucking pump and dump scheme, man.
The thing about those kind of things is they're always found out. So if that is a part of it, expect to see felony charges of all kinds.
It's publicly traded, right?
Right, and there were all of this. There was this discussion of, oh, was it insider trading? Blah blah blah. It's the thing is, if it's not like this happened in a vacuum. We do know government institutions look at this stuff. They've tracked down the cryptocurrency guys. It does take a little while, but most of the guys in charge know the amount of money or know what they can do and what they can't do. Yeah. And if something is that blatant and it turns out to be that blatant, it doesn't turn out to be a timing thing or all this, then hey, it may take a little while. But those guys, they will be outed. It will happen. We occasionally see people get away with stuff. We certainly do. But people like this, when it's this kind of situation, especially, to be brutally honest, video game fans and PR and all that stuff are very vocal. They're not going to shut up. I mean, guys, I still have people mention that Sony got Final Fantasy from Nintendo. And that was like 25 years ago. And they're still holding the grudge.
Mention that fucking EA doesn't like single player games.
Yeah, right. There's
imagine that, man.
Which leadership has completely changed. So I saw a claim that Accepts did dump stock. We do know that they sold some, but there's a lot of different things that happen where it can be okay to sell stock. That'll be something that experts will discuss. I personally think it's bad timing, regardless. So it doesn't, even if like everybody gets away with it, and by the way, these CEOs, especially John, everybody already knows what that person's like. And so it doesn't take a long time before people just be like, yeah, I don't think so, But on the other hand, Bobby is still running Activision. Right? So may take longer than we all want. But yeah, it's just one of those things, man. It absolutely sucks. We're seeing Unreal continually do well. They need to fix a couple of their things. But Godot, the other engine, Godot, is I guess doing well. And Reg and I discussed this for hours yesterday because he, of course, is doing all these different game engines to test for his game. And he was like, he did this filter where he checked all the visual novels and what they use. And Unity wasn't the highest. There's this other one that sounds like an Elder God name, like Rapan or something. It's very high. But Unity is high. And those guys don't make money usually, or they do itch.io. You know, they just throw it up on itch and they're like, pay me if you, here's the big, look at that. Ignore Steam, ignore all these others. Imagine itch.io or something like that, where they're like, pay me if you want to. And there's community installs many times where one person can buy 20 copies and give 19 to everybody else. So you're telling me like that
you're paying
some poor dude has to pay for charity?
Yeah.
Like, that is ridiculous. They screwed up, man. They screwed up. I just realized that as I continue to talk. That's another thing.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. Quantum Mechanics says it's definitely not a pump and dump scheme. There's regulations on when senior execs can sell. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Is it'll take experts to
it's regulated, isn't it?
Yeah.
Obviously a sarcastic comment.
Yeah, but it can also turn out to be where every step they took turned out wrong anyway, and they did do a mistake. We have seen CEOs or just even normal people make a mistake. By the way, buying and selling stock myself, I've done a couple accidental stock trades that really harmed me. Yeah.
Oh, no.
By the way, you can't reverse those. You can't say, oh, I accidentally hit the wrong button. One time I sold a stock at a tremendous loss, and I had I looked at everything and it was one different number, because it is a little confusing. I'm not saying they're confused. I'm talking about me as a person making a mistake. Go ahead, Johnny.
By the way, Reg was telling me the CEO is used to work for EA.
Yes.
Is that
John Riccatello?
Yeah, and he had some outrageous things about wanting to charge about like reloads in Battlefield.
Amazing, amazing things he said. Listen to this. I'm going to generalize this quote, but he says this. Let's say you're in a Battlefield game and you're in depth in the battle and you run out of bullets and you need to reload. You can charge somebody $1 to reload because they're invested in the game and they're less sensitive to the purchase.
They'll be less picky about.
That guy said that. You know what I mean? Like, have you guys? There's a German term for having that dark thought. The really, I can't remember. It's not Schadenfreude or whatever, which is like whatever the term is, but where you hope for the worst. But there's that thought. Have you guys ever had a really evil thought where your brain is like
almost like intrusive thoughts?
Yeah, like I'm going to push somebody in front of a car, and you're like, what?
Yeah, of course.
How did that happen? That's the thing. That guy wrote his down or said it in front of others.
Yeah,
like
he stated it.
Right. That's something that you know, we all sit here and we're all, you know, you might think something, but I would never tell you guys.
You wouldn't
things.
say out loud your thing, like pushing someone off a bridge. But he was.
No, he said it. He said it. He said it multiple times, by the way. I think Franklin, I believe is it Andrew, the guy who did Sony for a while? He looks like the Bond villain. I think he's said some pretty crazy stuff too in meetings where you're just like, that's weird. Let's see. This Unity news is a hot mess. Did the CEO only sell a very small portion? I don't know. That'll be something that I'll definitely check. Is there any other than that of a mass sell-offs of stock? Oh, do you mean like somebody sells a small amount? Yeah, no. I'm assuming these big guys, right? They're not going to sell 2 shares like I would. They're going to sell 200,000 shares, you know. But yeah, it's one of those things. Maybe they want to get it really down and then sell it and just move on. I don't know. Game On says, I really like the term dark patterns for sinister monetization practices in games. True that. Ooh. Yeah. Because it sounds sinister as it is.
Yeah.
When you look at monetization too, I was just telling these guys prior to the podcast, there's a DLSS mod for Starfield that is paid. And I was joking with these guys saying that it is weird that somebody made FPS a monetization.
Right.
Just a weird time. What? Yeah, dark, pure dark.
A little scummy. There's free a free version of it that's worse. That's only DLSS 2. But there are free alternatives that aren't that big of a difference, honestly.
Yeah, man, it's weird. I don't know. Do either one of you guys use any of these mods for Starfield, or am I the only one? Of course, you do. You're using DLSS 3 or
2.51.
2.51.
Yeah, I only have a 2080, so 3 would not benefit me.
Right. Yeah. That's another thing, guys. By the way, I get why it's done, but when a tech comes out that you can't use the thing with the older tech. So DLSS 3 frame gen, you're like, oh, this is exciting. They're like, yeah, but it doesn't work on the old.
Yeah, it's still exciting for me, man. Honestly, it's new hardware that's being implemented to reduce load, and I'm all for it. You know what I mean?
So am I. Yeah. I think it's a great idea. That's why GTA 5 sells so many. People fantasize about hurting others. I mean, that's not untrue.
That's a dark reflection on the human nature. Right?
That's not untrue, though. Like when I play GTA, I told you guys I did the first-person mode in GTA, punched a guy, and actually paused.
We all slayed a few prostitutes. Let's be real.
Right, but the first time I did first-person, I paused for a second. And I was like, ooh, this hits different than third person.
Was it a bit more intense?
It was.
Like
it was.
Proximity to it?
Yeah. Javier says, so Unreal does what Unity don't. Too soon? I mean, it's not too soon. It's already passed. These guys have made their choice. Even if they roll it back. Even if they roll it back, it's sort of a mess. Do you guys ever mess with Unity or Unreal behind the scenes just to...
I did.
Which one? Both?
I messed with Unity more. I think I was doing C# scripting at the time for it.
Mm-hmm.
Right, Unreal uses C++, and I was just like fucking around, doing some 2.5D stuff. Yeah, just messing with like physics mostly.
Oh, yeah, gotcha. And what about you, Johnny? Have you ever behind the scenes just throw an editor up and no? Okay, yeah. No. See, I messed mostly with Unreal. So Unreal's blueprints are amazing. You know, you want a first-person shooter. Yeah, you did. The editor is sweet. Right? Yeah, it's going to be great to see some others come up. I like competition. I don't like it this bad. Like, I don't want this kind of competition, but I do like competition. That's why I want to move to something. The Crew. So, the Crew Motorfest or Motorfest, right, is legitimately Forza Horizon alt. It is Forza Horizon in every way, shape, or form other than the name. It is one of the biggest carbon copies I've ever seen. By the way, it's actually fun. And you can put crews together. So I guess it's already better than 2. But I don't know if you guys have checked this out. Its SEO is bad. I don't know how well it did because they didn't PR it well. But if you guys get a chance to check it out and you like Forza Horizon and the new Forza Motorsport doesn't excite you, the Crew's got a 5-hour free, free demo, free.
Not bad.
Yeah, free jumping. But
and it's got a crew.
And it's got a crew. Yeah. Were you guys Forza Horizon fans?
Yeah, for sure.
So that's there. I mean, if you want to jump into it, I feel that it got lost somehow.
100%.
Yeah,
I totally forgot about it
because of Baldur's Gate and Starfield. Do you think it's the time frame?
Yeah, I think so.
Almost no marketing.
Yeah, I didn't see any push.
Maybe it's the gaming industry bubble, just focusing on crying about Starfield.
I think there's something different. Because those games we usually see a significant push, like
they usually get sponsors on Twitch,
right? Sponsorships.
There's none of that. I didn't see any of that.
Anybody in chat play the Crew? Because it to me, it's very interesting that they copied Forza Horizon so closely. Turned out to be fun. They got some good playlists. It looks pretty good. Doesn't look as good as Forza. But I'm wondering if that's what caused people to not be interested in it, because I was looking up SEO. You can check keywords and search numbers in YouTube. It ain't there, man. Like I don't know if you can see the current number of people. I don't know if it's on Steam. I didn't check if it's on Steam, but I was pretty stunned.
So this is going to sound a little harsh, but if it doesn't look as good as Forza, why would you play the Crew instead of Forza? Is there like some unique aspect to it?
There is, that I'm hearing. And I talked to Lord Addict, and he's open that he's playing it and stuff like that. But I have actually seen a lot of people say the playlists in the Crew are very fun and very separated, and there's really unique driving aspects to each one, and that they've really enjoyed that.
Did they remove the ability to kind of go into different vehicles and stuff?
No, there's multiple vehicles.
Okay. Yeah, no. I mean, not cars, like planes and.
There's planes. Yep.
Boats and shit.
Yep.
So you still have the thing where you can like transform,
go into other vehicles. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Crew 2 sucked.
Never
that's why.
One.
Yeah. I mean, the Crew 2 didn't. Yeah, that is true. Game On says the Crew 1 and 2 released quietly too, but Ubisoft still sees some value. Yeah, I think the Crew 2 is the only game I've ever tweeted about that the developer got mad at me. Because I said, why did anybody ask for the Crew 3? And I don't know anybody who plays it. And the developer lead for Crew 3 was like, I have numbers and I disagree. But I was like, do you? I mean, I don't know. I mean, why does Ubisoft keep doing it if no one talks about it, no one seems to play it?
I don't know. All I remember is Crew 1 just being hyped a lot. It was part of the trailers in 2013. All the Ubisoft Lies trailers. Remember the trifecta of Division, what's the hacking one, and this Watch Dogs, and it was hyped a lot. It was like, oh shit, you can go anywhere in America with your friends or something, make a crew. I remember it being talked a lot, and then it came out.
Yeah, man, I don't know. It's an odd situation. In Mortal Kombat, we're going to talk about that in a second too, because Mortal Kombat's the same way, where some people don't even know it's out. It's got the early access for 5 days, which I think their early access is softening the PR push because they don't know when to push it. They haven't really figured out, when do you push it? Do you push for the early access and people get mad going, it's a microtransaction for early access, which rightfully so, that is exactly what it is. Or is it some other thing that we're sort of not really understanding on why, in particular, Ubisoft throws these out? My personal opinion is Ubisoft is doing what a lot of games are, or companies are, throwing stuff out and hoping one of them catches that will overpay on the development for the others that don't work.
Dude,
right?
The best example of that is the fucking the pirate ship one. Oh my goodness gracious.
Skull and
They're
Bones.
literally throwing shit on the wall, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a hope from Ubisoft that they have a couple captured. They tried it with Extinction, and I liked Extinction a lot. I actually still recently played Extinction, which is the Rainbow Six alien one. But they tried it. They try stuff, and they see what works. I mean, let's be honest. Riders Republic and Steep is very confusing sometimes. You're like, which is which? Which one of these is, like, if I see footage, I have to sometimes look it up and go, oh, right, that's Steep. That's not Riders Republic. For Honor did well for them. So it feels like they're just throwing some stuff out, and they realize that if they can make one catch, it will overpay the development of the other ones. And that's sort of what they're doing. I don't know if that's right. It just feels like that.
Yeah, I would agree. It kind of feels like the Google approach, which is have a crack at it, different teams releasing like different software, and 1 out of 20 will do great. A lot of them will just coast. Yeah. And then the ones that are a loss,
but isn't it a little bit like a girlfriend who pretends that they like you and keeps pulling back, and at some point you're like, I'm not gonna pursue this anymore.
Well, are we the girlfriend in this?
No, in metaphor? we're the guy who's going like, what is wrong with this person? They're hot and cold, right? Because if you look at every Ubisoft game as a tentative title that's not Assassin's Creed or Far Cry, then you hold off to see if it's popular. Well, guess what? If you hold off to see it's popular, you're not the only one doing it. So everybody's holding off to see if it's popular, and it won't be popular, and therefore it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
You're see like, what you mean.
I'm going to wait, and everybody...
Except...
Go ahead.
I think you may be underestimating the hype culture of like, ooh, it's a new game. True. And especially with the services like, you pay, right, as I call it, you pay plus.
Yeah.
You can get in there day one and try out the new game, and maybe that builds that excitement.
That's
critical
a good
mass.
Point. It could. I just don't know if it.
Yes, on paper, it's possible.
So, looking at all these, I have no issue with them copying it. I was asked to talk about that in particular. I personally have no issue whatsoever with it. Here's why. Forza Horizon I love, but I do feel that the last Forza Horizon was a tiny bit safe. And I liked it a lot. But I feel like with the crew coming out, they can look. And this is what I want. It's like you get 2 running backs in an NFL team, and they're both trying for the same, they're both getting paid, but they're both trying to get the one lead spot. I like that. I want those guys to be, balling out and trying to figure it out. And trying to see who's the best. I think that's the best. I think that's how we get the best games, is by competition.
It is, yeah. It reminds me of the competition between some of the cloud providers like, AWS and Microsoft and stuff. Yeah. And the only reason we've come so far in the cloud world is because of the brutal reckless competition between those two, and how close
That's a good way of
the
putting
product
it,
was. You know, like one was Forza, the other one was Crew. They kind of doing the same thing exactly. One maybe slightly.
I love
in a
the
different
idea
way.
of reckless competition,
Reckless.
throwing
Just-
it and cheap.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you know, where you're like, whoa, the price is amazing. It's because they want you, right? And that reckless, I'm going to use that, man. I'm going to use that all the time. I love the idea of that, where like CEOs are just, let's do it.
Yeah.
You know, Unity.
Yeah.
Well, Unity just did that.
Whoops.
Yeah. Looking at here, Ubisoft just feels like a generic game factory. Yeah, they've got some great games though, man. Assassin's, I've loved a lot of these, not all of them, but I've loved those. Far Cry, I enjoyed. I enjoyed Extraction. Like I said, I didn't think it was the best game in the world, but I did enjoy it.
By the way,
I think
real
their
quick,
mechanics are just like super seeped into them that it's just become generic. Like the generic Ubisoft thing is where the game mechanics are all kind of similar, but the settings make them interesting, right? Yeah.
Dude, Pandora, Avatar is Far Cry, even though it's not the devs. We talked about that yesterday. It is Far Cry.
It's got all the makings.
All of them. And I think you're right that the gameplay aspects and the HUD are generic. You see them, but it's do you buy into the world? So like Avatar, if you like Far Cry, but you weren't a fan of 6 and Cuba, maybe you're a fan of Avatar.
Dude, I don't remember the last time I actually beat an Ubisoft game. Like legitimately beat one.
Really?
I don't even remember. I couldn't tell you. Probably Assassin's Creed 2 or something.
What about Immortals? Phoenix Rising. Did you play that one?
Oh,
I love
yeah,
that
I didn't
game.
beat it though. Yeah,
Gotcha.
I just did. Sometimes I enjoy them. Like I enjoyed Valhalla for a certain number of hours, and I'm like, okay, I'm done. You know, I've seen
Odyssey. You didn't finish that one.
I never beat it, but I played a lot of it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I can honestly say this too, guys. I am not 100% sure. No, I'm 100% sure. Sorry, that they don't require beating.
No.
True.
I got my money's worth.
Exactly.
I played fucking 70 hours of Valhalla, dude. I'm not gonna play another like 100. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah. And by the way, you can beat Valhalla in 70 anyway. You just chose you were doing other stuff.
To break doors and fucking unlock them with keys and stupid convoluted fucking bombs and shit. Yeah,
dude, Valhalla has, you know, and Mirage, by the way, we were warning about this. Well, at least I was, that don't think Mirage is like an adjustment. And now that we've seen the previews and stuff, it absolutely is not. It really is the new ones in a different place. But it's like the removal of a lot of the parkour stuff and the way the combat is. It is very similar to the new ones.
So not going back to
of course not, because some of the mechanics from the old ones, Johnny. I love Syndicate, but it's crusty. When I play Syndicate and Rogue, which are two of my favorites, I'm like, man.
Yeah, the combat chops in those were like for nowadays. It wouldn't really.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Kind of a silly thing. Ubisoft makes Ubisoft games, just like Bethesda games. Exactly. I fully completed Far Cry 5. The setting and story were pretty relatable. Yeah, I know a lot of people who liked 5 and were not huge fans of 6. I personally thought 6 was a mess.
Bro, 10 hours in, 6? You thought 6 was the best?
A mess. A complete utter mess.
Because I played like 10 hours of it. I'm like, nope, this ain't it, bro.
Yeah, the setting didn't click with me at all, sadly.
Just the same shit over and over, man. I was like, no, I'm done.
I just don't think Cuba was an exciting place. It's a little like if Forza chooses when they chose to do the UK.
Man.
I was a little less. Oh, you like
Gus? That guy, Giancarlo Esposito.
Right.
He's great, right? But the setting has to work.
Yeah, and they wrote him, and like he did a good acting job, but I don't think the writing was that good either.
No.
Yeah. Chat, are you guys getting the Crew 2? I'd like to know if anybody's played it. If anybody is Crew 3, Motor Fort, I think is what it's called. Motor Crew, whatever. Crew 3. And then while you guys are answering that, let's jump to Mortal Kombat. What were you going to say, Johnny? Go ahead.
I was just going to ask you about, so for Mirage, right? Is it pronounced like that? Like Mirage or
Mirage? Mirage.
Mirage. Yeah.
What is your guys' level of anticipation or excitement? Will you jump into it?
I went in waves, man. I started with like very excited for it, and then the more I saw, I was like, another Assassin's Creed. And now for some reason, like I saw other like previews, and I was like, cool, yeah, I'm down, man. I'm down to have a whole town as a setting again, and just enjoy that smaller game. Yeah, it'll still have a lot of empty wildland as well outside of it. I saw like the bordering outside of the city includes like, how Cyberpunk had like the Badlands and stuff, but I'm excited for it to be town focused. Yeah, so I'm not like super hyped for it. It's not on my priorities, but yeah, it's another Assassin's Creed game. I'm kind of down.
That's the way I am.
How long that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like it's if the world is cool, then I may like it a lot because the world is cool. I mean, I think Valhalla was cool in some places, but didn't feel like a Viking, so that didn't hit as well as I think it could have. And then Ragnarok's DLC was incredible. It was some of the best DLC ever, and that's for Valhalla Ragnarok. So it just depends on the gameplay and the world.
And being a pure assassin,
and being a pure assassin,
like an actual assassin.
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to be a little bit like Phoenix Rising, where Immortals Phoenix Rising, where maybe I'll play it and go, oh, I like this contained experience more than I thought I would, because I
might hit it with the story, right? They might hit it from that perspective as well.
I'm seeing all no's with Wannabe Dev saying he is playing the crew as the demo, and I would tell everybody, if you've already got a not Uplay account, but Uplay account, but not the premium, you still can do the demo. I would suggest, if you think it looks good, you might as well play it, because it's free 5 hours, and you never know, you might end up liking it. I like the demos. I think that's awesome that any of these companies do that.
It's a great recent trend to see more of them.
So Mortal Kombat, first of all, I do not know how, and I do not know what they were thinking, but Megan Fox's voice acting is legitimately the worst voice acting in a game I've heard in years. And here's what bothers me. It makes Sonya Blade, which was, what's her name from the UFC? She did Sonya Blade in the last one. It makes her appear to be a thespian. It is so bad that I was watching a movie of the gameplay cutscenes, and I was looking over here, and I heard her voice and was like, what the fuck is going on? Did it jump to a different video? It is a table read. It is terrifyingly bad. I just want to say, the audio director, I don't care if you have them from one time, the audio director's job is to go, whoa. It doesn't matter if
we
it's
need
Megan
to run
Fox.
that again.
You just have her run it again. And by the way, I have no issues with Megan Fox. I actually think her voice would be awesome for that. But the director has to have the cojones. And by the way, I'm not calling out the director. I'm saying whoever was listening to this should have been like, oh shit, we have a serious problem. We need this person to actually show some emotion and like be in the moment. Go ahead, Absy.
No, it's just gonna be edgy.
Oh,
do you want me to be edgy?
No, I mean not really. But
I was just, okay, we're good.
But I mean, when you look at it, she has done the robot cartoon, Robot Chicken or whatever.
Transformers.
She did a couple Robot Chicken. She did Transformers, but I'm saying that was voiceover. Oh, and she did fine.
Did she do a lot of voice work before?
Not a lot, but she's done enough that she could have done well. And her voice, I think, fits. And they didn't even use her for the character. So I just don't get it. And by the way, now they're saying that the grunts and groans weren't her. It was a different actress.
Wow.
So when I look at this, I'm like, I don't understand.
Wait, what'd you pay? That's weird, right?
Dude,
so you pay for Megan Fox, but you don't use her
let's
grunts.
do this shit,
And you don't use her.
Give her a couple drinks or whatever she needs to break loose, because it's uncomfortable sometimes. You know, it's bad.
Right.
It's It's terrible.
And that makes me sad, because I saw like she was excited about participating in it. I just randomly saw it posted.
Yep.
And I was like, that's cool to see more of these actors excited to be in games.
I love it. I love it.
And she was into it, but apparently it didn't.
Well, another one is the girl from The Peripheral. She loves video games. It's like you could have had her do it. Yeah. I mean, she would have probably rubbed some dirt on there and got it like, emotional. $5 super chat. Let me read this. She speaks in lowercase the entire time. She does.
Oh no,
that's a freaking amazing
that's a great way
to describe it.
That's
Damn, I wish I had done a review. I would have said that. I would have said, what did Johnny say about AWS? Reckless, She performed reckless lowercase reading of her
Reckless,
dialogue. Reckless. Mike Sue, I think, $20 super chat. Megan Fox voiceover in MK1 is extremely disappointing to say the least, and the screaming grunts are not Megan.
Damn.
Abigail Breslin is what it sounds like might be the actress who did that. Man.
Why would you not take her grunts? Like now I'm curious. Are they too sexual? Because she's a bit.
If they are, she's a vampire. She's like this.
It would fit, wouldn't it?
Fit. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
dude, it sucks because it's so bad. It stopped me in my tracks when I was not staring at it to figure out what had happened. It's that bad.
Wow.
Like, it's like, oh. You're
like checking your TV. Like,
it's like Bueller from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Bueller. Is that Adam Stein? I think that's Stein is his name, who talks in monotone like that. She was excited for the check, I guess. I think she's probably doing fine money-wise. I think she really did want to work on it.
Yeah.
But, I don't know, man. I don't know. It just seems like this has happened. It also happened with Ronda Rousey and Sonya Blade from the last. That's who it was, Ronda Rousey. It's unfortunate, man, because voice actors. This happened with Immortals a little bit. Immortals had some actors and actresses that were pretty well known. Ben Stein, thanks guys, pretty well known, and turned out to just not deliver.
Yeah, and we actually see it with some high profile voice actors in games where they kind of phone it in. And then you go, well, is it their fault or is it the fault of, we
all remember Matthew Perry and Fallout New Vegas.
Yeah, Matthew Perry. And what's funny is Michael Hogan, who is the second in command in Battlestar under Adama, Michael Hogan did Mass Effect and Fallout and did amazing. He was actually even better in Mass Effect. I thought Michael Hogan's incredible. Like, that dude is awesome. By the way, Michael Hogan slipped and fell 3 years ago at a fan meet and greet, and he's got a GoFundMe. So if any of you guys are fans of Battlestar Galactica, the new one, and are fans of him, you can always go and donate to him. I'm not paid by them, but I did. So he's had a stroke. So I think he's still bedridden after 2 years. Yeah, Michael Hogan rocked it. Dinklage from Destiny. There's a wizard on the moon.
And his Destiny performance was lowercase.
It was lowercase.
Yeah.
But it was just a line. It was
for him
because
he's such a presence, right?
He's awesome in everything he does. I mean, I've watched him in some shit shows. I watched him in good sci-fi shows, including
I watched
Threshold.
him in shit movies.
Yeah, and he's still acting.
It was still great. Yeah.
It might be. I did if you guys want to check, you can see my interviews with voice actors, and one of them I did was Bateman from Hitman.
Oh yeah, I remember.
But anyway, he talked to me about what it's like being in the booth. Now, he as Hitman doesn't deliver emotion. He has to be level on purpose, but his cadence has to be perfect. And he talked a little bit. He's like, I don't get to rub some emotion on it, but I have to make sure my cadence matches for every single line throughout the entire game. So his difficulty is in a different spot. But I do wonder if these actors or actresses get in there and they're just like, they just can't nail it because maybe there's a confusion. There's you've heard anime people talk about it where they're like, sometimes they're not responding to the person in front of them and it confuses them, But I mean, how do they get jobs? Because a lot of times a table read or a read for a job is just you reading to the person, to the director. And
I believe Japanese devs making anime games and JRPGs intentionally get the worst fucking English voice actors
to do the dubs or whatever.
Depths and dumps of voice acting to do the dubs.
They just go through the nastiest.
Yeah,
so let's talk about the good stuff. Mortal Kombat is good. It's a fun game. I heard that the invasion thing is a grind, unfortunately, and it's not as cool as I was hoping. I was definitely hoping for that to be cooler. I'm hearing a lot that it's pretty grindy. But the actual combat itself, multiple people on our Discord have been playing it and actually really did enjoy it. Really did think that it's a good combat game.
A little bit of a stream of the story, and it seems like before it had this hilariousness, this comedy from being kind of like a B movie direction, but now it seems like they're really leaning into it, where they're making jokes on like in game, right? Where they're really leaning into
the first 3/4.
Okay, well, I just saw that like a little bit from the start,
bro.
And they switched Raiden and Liu Kang's roles.
Yeah, let's
And
there's
Sub-Zero and
some stuff,
Scorpion
but
are
let's not talk too
friends
much
now.
about it. But yeah, you've got this. No, it's okay because it's a different world, so you do have this kind of stuff. But I will say this: for the first 3/4, it's amazing writing, and it nails some of the jokes. The last fourth is pure it's trash. Not only is it trash, they copy things from other movies, which I'm not going to say what movies, but they copy it word for word as a joke, and it does not land. And I think some people will know what show or movie I'm talking about, but there's multiple characters that repeat from movies that aren't their movies, by the way. They're repeating lines from like other movies. So what's, I am Batman, like I'm, or swear to me imagine a character like Raiden saying, swear to me. And you're like, wait, isn't that Batman? That's what happens in the last fourth of this game. The story goes from being like, oh, this is like well done, and they're doing a pretty good job, to at the very end just going like, what happened? It's like a different person wrote it. But I would say for the first 3/4, very good. Very good. Good story, good characters, good switch ups, different universe. So you're trying to figure out who does, like you said, different characters are sort of in places you never expected, which is very cool.
I used to like those. It's like watching a long animated movie and just playing a little bit in between,
That sounds like a randomizer. These mods people play in like Souls games where different enemies appear at random, but with the main cast.
Thank you very much for that super chat. David says, we don't talk about Duchovny here because he can't say Oregon correctly. That is true. We're never talking about him again.
Yeah.
God, I hate that guy. No, I love him, but I just don't like his pronunciation of my state. But yeah, when you look at Mortal Kombat, it's doing pretty well. Its PR is low. Again, just checking numbers and looking at like who's talking about it. It's the lowest. It is about 1/10 what the last game was, which is interesting to me that it's that low.
1/10 in what sense?
In SEO search terms, meaning, so does somebody type in Mortal Kombat review?
Yeah.
Does somebody type in Mortal Kombat story? All of those terms are 1/10. It's coming in at a rough time.
SF6 killed it, you know what I mean, with the fighting game community.
Yeah.
And usually the fighting game community is more into the SF6 and Tekken. Those are the big ones. Then Mortal Kombat is more casual.
Absolutely.
More of the casual side. Yeah.
That's a very good point, that Street Fighter 6 redeemed Street Fighter in many ways for a lot of people.
In big ways.
Yeah. That's a good point. I hadn't even...
It redeemed the fighting game community in general. It got one of the biggest sales of all, like for fighting games.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
I mean, it nailed it. It did a really good job, especially when you look at the original Street Fighter 5 and no storyline. Remember when it first launched? I think it was like just arcade or whatever. It was missing a lot of stuff, and this one has the open world, or whatever you want to call it, pseudo open world. Nintendo Direct. So I didn't watch it. Yeah, I watched some of the video games being announced, and some looked, I mean, they were Nintendo games.
Nintendo games.
I don't think they're gonna announce anything crazy because the Switch 2 is like on the horizon. Yeah,
it did feel like the last gasp, not in a bad way, but in like a I mean, there was some new stuff, but it was safer, and it was like, we know the hardware can only do this, blah blah blah, and here's
what was the jewel of the crown?
There was
like
no
Paper
jewel.
Mario.
Paper Mario.
Yeah.
I didn't feel that there was any real jewels. There were some games that looked interesting, but not. It just all looked really safe. Really like okay,
like this will work.
This is for fans who already have a Switch. You're not going to go buy one for any of these, I don't think.
It's not a system seller or anything.
On the other hand, they had almost 600,000 people watch it, which is just nuts. I think a lot of people were hoping for a Switch 2.
A lot of people were hoping for Switch 2 announcements. The thing is, they're not going to announce it right now because there's the holiday season coming up, and they'd be missing
they want that last sales. One, right?
Yeah. But we know through leaks that in March 2024, something is going to happen, either the announcement or a release, or probably not a release, but something happening in March 2024, but we just don't know what.
Anybody in chat, what did you think about the Nintendo Direct? Post the titles that you liked. Absy, can you talk a little bit about the leaks? I'm going to let my dog out.
Oh, yeah. Let me bring some stuff up. But the leaks for the Switch 2 they look incredible, man. Let me tell you. If they're true, dude, the Switch 2.
Wait, really? We
haven't seen performance like this, or, kind of competing with current gen consoles since the GameCube. Now the leaker is supposedly a very reliable leaker, okay? And he said a couple things. I don't have it up right now, but he did say that they showed Tears of the Kingdom at 4K 60, and I'm pretty sure that would be docked because there's no reason to have 4K on a handheld. They showed the Matrix demo apparently, and it was running its ray tracing better than the other platforms because it's the only console with an NVIDIA chip, right? So it has tensor cores now, apparently, and it will feature DLSS 3.5, which I've been saying for a long time that DLSS 3.5 or DLSS in general, this is like the best use case for it, right?
Yeah,
this is the
game
only
changer.
console using. Yeah, it's the only console using that, and it's a great way to make the most out of small hardware, right? And just AI post processing and performance. So it was showing really good frames, and it might be back to competing with the other consoles. My prediction is that it will also feature backwards compatibility because the Switch sold so well. I think the Switch was one of the only consoles that didn't, or in recent times didn't feature backwards compatibility because the Wii U had such a low player base, and it was a completely different type of hardware than the Switch. But I believe the Switch 2 will feature backwards compatibility. And yeah, I hope they're true, man. The Nintendo does have good management. New management. So maybe they just want to go back to competing with the consoles of parent gen in the performance aspect. Yeah.
Well, if they push out something that can run the recent Zelda game in 4K 60,
yeah,
they will shut up a lot of people, including myself.
Yeah, and as someone pointed out, it does have real competition now in the form of handhelds coming out. So so that's another thing. Yeah,
true.
Yeah. When you look at DLSS, like Abssi was saying, everybody who looks at the NVIDIA stuff is NVIDIA's got its issues with partnership. That's why like Xbox will never work with them again, because they basically caused the original Xbox to fail because they refused the sign off of the hardware for Microsoft to lower the price. And a lot of companies just don't want to work with NVIDIA when it comes to hardware, but Switch is doing it, and not putting DLSS in would be such a negative. It would just not make sense, dude, even if it's lesser.
For NVIDIA as well, they'd want to do that. This is their console. This is the console the only console that uses NVIDIA. They'd be this is like as we've said, this is the best use case for it, and it's just they'd be shooting themselves in the foot if they don't.
As somebody who has a couple handhelds with higher than 1080p resolution, I can honestly say 1080p is still the sweet spot too. So if you want,
for handhelds for sure.
Yeah, get your FPS up, and then if you want to dock it and you want to do, you're aiming at generally 4K 60, that's fine. That's hard on some titles, so I'm sure some settings would be adjusted. But DLSS being in it, or even the cores just being there for all this kind of stuff, and them leveraging that is awesome.
Think of what frame gen can do, dude. Frame gen. Just,
and it depends also. I mean, we already look at, Sony has messed around with hundreds of different kinds of their, like, pixel doubling and, all their stuff. Spider-Man's done awesome in how they reconstruct their picture to a certain resolution. Yeah. Some companies do it better, some do it terrible, like Quantum Breaks was terrible when that first came out. It was utterly incomprehensible how they thought that was going to work, and it was all blurry and shit. Most companies on console do a good job.
Imagine a high fidelity Mario coming out. Like a high-def Mario.
High-def Mario, funny, rocking it. And it also would remove...
Photorealistic Mario?
No, not that. But it would... Chris Pratt standing there. It would remove the worry that a lot of us have about jumping into a handheld, which is the lesser than and no ports. Imagine if right now there's a lot of PlayStation and Xbox coming soon, blah, blah, blah. Oh, Switch, maybe. It would be nice to be like, this game, they're all just coming to Switch too. And you're like, all right, there may still be some compromises because we hear there's a PlayStation 5 Pro coming, and Microsoft, I'm sure, is going to, renew their systems at some point. They'll just continue to do it like iPhone. But yeah, man, I'm actually excited to see what the hardware is, and I also heard backwards compat is for sure there. So if that is true, which I think it will be, the only negative for the Switch currently, Switch 2, is cartridge tax
and battery.
Well, yeah,
potentially.
True. Yeah, potentially.
Yeah.
But cartridge tax just can't go away, which is pain because they stated they are sticking with cartridge. Yeah, they add to the price, and that's why we don't see a lot of the
I would
sales.
imagine, especially if it has backwards compat, to keep using the same kind of format.
Soma BT, $2 super chat. Give me 4K with ray tracing Mario. Yeah, that would be awesome. I mean, it would just be awesome to play a lot of the current games on the Switch and not be held back. Michael Tinan gifted 10 ACG memberships. Thank you very much, man. You rock. Sorry, go ahead.
And actually, I have pretty much all third-party AAA devs releasing on 3 platforms instead of 2. The more, the merrier, right?
Yep. And imagine a dev going. Admittedly, it's NVIDIA and AMD, but we're so far, and it's ARM most likely. But they've already figured it out for the most part. So just see these companies say it's on both. Or it's on all 3, that helps the developer too. The developer can say, yeah, man, we can release them all at the same time. That's 3 different platforms you're hitting. Yes, you're paying for port work, but still, to me, that is awesome.
Yeah, and it might help some games like the Pokemon games, where every release is a technical disaster.
Yeah.
Right? At least if they can kind of brute force it.
What I'm more excited about is Xenoblade Chronicles devs actually utilizing it. Fucking Zelda.
Yeah, because it already looked incredible, right?
What would those worlds look like when they're not 16 gigabyte low fidelity kind of? They have to compensate with CPU
low textures.
Issues and,
And I think with backwards compat, it also lets them just sort of move forward, holding all the people who want to still play a Switch game, because I'm sure they'll still release a couple games on the Switch. And then it lets them, move forward. Now, somebody here says they don't think it'll be called Switch 2 because Nintendo's never copied a game, but they did with the Wii U and the Wii. I mean, so this could be, to me, the Wii U is a dumb name, but it is what they were trying to, it meant something to them. I just have a feeling this will be called Switch 2, but.
Yeah.
Or maybe like Switch something.
Switch
Aru.
Switch-a-roo. Oh god. Oh my god. Would that be amazing if it was called Switch-a-roo? Switch-a-roo coming soon. You're like, oh, come on, guys. Yeah, that would be phenomenal if it was called that. Let's see. I want a dark green controller. Bayonetta with good resolutions would be awesome. Yeah, I mean, all those would be.
Yeah. Fucking hell, I want Astral Chain again with or being able to. What if you can play the old games?
Xenoblade 3, because that resolution was rough as hell.
Xenoblade 3 would be amazing, and oh man, there's a lot, dude. Astral Chain is one of my favorite platinum games or action games of all time, and just playing it at 60 FPS would be sick.
Switch up. Somebody said Switch up would work too. Dude, Switch up would work. It makes sense on multiple levels. Like up, it's higher power. It's you moving to the new one.
And if you can play some of the current, right? If you can play some of the current games, but just
better
on steroids,
that's
better
what they
res.
supposedly showed at least.
That would be incredible.
Yeah, that's what I heard was that they were showing some of the older ones. A little like Spider-Man was showing. Here's the improvement to the Spider-Man on PlayStation 5. And, that works for me. Xenoblade 3 is on emulator 4K. It's beautiful.
Yes, that's how I played it.
Imagine just being able to turn that on your Switch and play. 1080p, by the way, is fine with me as long as they're cleaning up the picture.
On handheld? Yeah.
They're, I don't want the shimmering, which is a big deal on grass and stuff like if you can get rid of that and play it. Handheld is phenomenal. I'm doing right now a bunch of Starfield on GeForce streaming to my handheld. And it's just like, dude, this is...
Nice.
This is insane. Yeah, it's very exciting to see them finally moving forward. It's time.
Yeah.
How long has the Switch been around?
GameCube. Since GameCube, we haven't seen that type of performance competition.
Avoid says I caught Absy calling in on Jaffe's stream.
Oh yeah. He was talking about Starfield or whatever and getting Collins, and then I went and provided my 2 cents. I guess some people recognized me from there.
Who's Jaffe? Oh,
he's the guy that made
God of War, right? Originally.
And has some spicy ass takes. Yeah.
Well, who doesn't? It's YouTube. That's the only way you can get any,
fun
energy.
Fun guy. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I just think when you look at the Switch, it's time. It's been years. Yeah. People moved on from the PS4 already and the Xbox One, so it's time to move on from the Switch. was already time to move on from the Switch for a while. But, finally doing so is good. Moving on from there, Lies of P. So, I thought the demo was terrible.
I thought the demo was terrible, yeah.
I thought, and their review schedule was completely messed up. They withheld all the creators from, anybody who does video only for whatever reason. They held everybody back from doing reviews. And so I was like, well, I'll just play this on my own. It's no big deal. And sort of see what I can see. It hasn't impressed me yet.
Has it improved at all, like mechanically? Feelings wise,
it's about the same. I know a lot of people who really like the demo. I thought the demo was just absolutely not exciting. The game, I don't know, man. I think it's going to appeal to certain people who like the mechanics. I think the story and telling lies or telling the truth to people, that might grab some people, but probably not the people who are going to fight through a Dark Souls style game, because it can be difficult. That's so it's difficult.
I heard it's one of the more difficult ones.
Yeah. I'm hearing that a lot. I haven't really hit that moment, but I've definitely noticed that you do have to watch things, closer than, let's say, what's another game that's coming closer than
or something.
No, it's about Surge 2 now. But what's the kung fu one, or the martial, or the Japanese one, or Wukong? No.
Wulong.
Wulong.
No, sorry.
Yeah. No, that's all right.
Different.
And Ronnie says the timing on parries is a little weird, and I would agree with that.
Disappointed me.
So the perfect parry has an insanely tight timing.
Oh, does it?
I don't know what it is, but it's
for Lies of P,
a fourth of a second, right? It's it's a tiny space of time for you to perfect parry.
Okay.
So that was one thing that I thought they need to relax that a little bit, because it's to the point where, I don't know if many people are going to be able to do it physically in a reliable way, because the parry system in any game only feels good, in my opinion, if you can develop the skill set to do it reliably.
Mm-hmm.
Because then it feels like you're in control, right? You're owning the enemy because you understand the parry system. If it becomes almost random, like you're flipping a coin and you're going to get the perfect parry or you're going to miss it, I think that to me doesn't feel good. And that's what I got from
because it's like the risk versus reward thing, and if you're not going to be able to pull it off consistently, you might as well dodge, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and we saw that with Wulong, where once you learned the different ways it was a little wider than most games, I would personally say, like the ability. And so once you learned it, you're like, all right, here we go, we can sort of figure it out. And with this game, I would agree that it's tight and you can figure it out, but I would say the upper echelon, what's really going to separate Lies of P is the upper echelon people will probably be able to do it most of the time, and you even see some people can do no hit runs, but those are, pretty special people. It's like, for the most part, people get hit occasionally. This one is just a higher percentage, I think, will miss it than in past titles. It's definitely there. But I would also say that Lies of P isn't that good looking. And I am definitely a fan of these kind of games when they're interesting to me visually. Elden Ring was different than Dark Souls 3, different than Dark Souls 2. The Surge was different. They all offer a different fiction. Yeah. This fiction does not pay off anywhere near what I guess I assumed. Even that one game we played with the robot girl.
Yeah, Steel Rising?
Right.
I want to say?
Steel something, yeah. Even that one enticed me visually more because of the mechanical workings of some of the characters. And so far, Lies of P is like,
so
not grabbing
this
me
fantasy
visually.
With the puppets, like automaton puppets hunting you down, and so this type of thing didn't really speak to you.
That their representation isn't really dialed up. It's sort of just like, oh, there's some bad guys. It doesn't really make me, I haven't yet seen a guy where I'm like, oh my God, that's a good, unique play on their interpretation of the fiction yet. But I haven't played it all the way through either.
Yeah.
So, I've only played about 4 to 6 hours.
Look, in these games, for me, you're not going to play it for the story. You're not going to play it just for the looks, even if you really like the looks. I think you're going to play it because you like the moment to moment, the mechanics, how it feels. And for me, nothing felt good about it. The range of the weapons felt terrible. The dodging felt like, again, the timing was just off.
Yeah.
Based on how many attacks the enemies can output, and they're uncancelable, versus your attacks are canceled by getting hit, and you have very limited ability to dodge, and the perfect parry is very tight, and if you miss it, it's a high penalty.
It's a high penalty,
very high penalty. And then even blocking, right? It's rough because you take damage, and your blocking ability is also.
Yeah, and it's Game Pass, as somebody said, which is great, right? Like, it's Game Pass.
Yeah, that's good Game Pass.
Yeah, because even if you don't want to spend 60, you can spend 15 and do Game Pass. So it's like, all right, I'll just check it out on Game Pass and see where it is. And I think this is a game that I certainly wouldn't play a second time, even if I end up really liking it. The parts I've played haven't, really grabbed me. So that is one thing, is that, like, okay, so Game Pass is here. That's great. You can play it on there. I don't know a lot of people who would buy it, like, to play again, at least so far. Now, I've seen a lot of people who really like it, but I haven't really read a lot of reviews to know if they liked it later on or if they felt there was some return. The people I've talked to who are creators were not huge fans. They were fans somewhat, some of them less or so, but we'll see when the reviews come out, Yeah, let's stop the free on Game Pass. Exactly. It's not. It's free in the way that you may have got Game Pass for a different reason, but exactly. But it is also only $15. So the idea that
it's still a cheap,
and 1 month you could certainly do 10 games. So I can see why people call it free on Game Pass, but it is always a weird thing. But it's so funny because most people I know don't say it's free on Game Pass. They just say it's on Game Pass, and I've already paid for it.
I would agree with that.
So therefore, I'm already in the ecosystem. But for the most part, no one cares what your terminology is. Only us. Like, whenever I talk to anybody else and they say it's free on Game Pass, unless they're a YouTuber, I'm just like, it makes total sense. To them, they're just saying that. It's like,
because they're bought into that.
Well, and you know why? Because they care if the game is good. They don't care about the terminology of how we term it randomly in a chat or something. Like, they're just like, I don't give a shit. I'm just calling it free on Game Pass, and that's what I'm doing. It is one of the things where we speak to certain people, but when you jet out from this group, the terminologies are always like very loose, roguelite versus roguelike.
Whatever. We did see some strange review thought processes for this one, I would argue. I don't know if you've seen many reviews out there. No,
I've just looked at a little bit and seen some scores.
What I've noticed is, for one, they're very high. And, so you even have a lot of 5 out of 5s in different places. Like, I think Kind of Funny, some Eurogamer, some outlets. But my problem is not with the score itself, because, as we always say, that person could simply have liked the game a lot, right? And that's their opinion. That's great. But for me, when they go through the list, right, they're saying, well, the parry doesn't feel good, doesn't feel reliable. Well, the dodging feels bad. I didn't like the range in the weapons, because they also mentioned some of these things that I brought up. But then they go on to say 5 out of 5. And that's where, for me, in a game like this, the gameplay matters so much that you have to ding it 1 point or something, right? If you're saying all these major elements aren't clicking or need tweaking, they aren't fun at times. Like, they say some bosses are spongy. The optional bosses are just, you skip them because they're unfun sponges. Like, surely that has to come into the equation. You can't just come out of the other end with a 5 out of 5, in my opinion, when you have all these, deterring factors.
I mean, I would say that if they explain it, that's why I have fun factor in mind, because I can say, it's still a buy. A buy is a very general like amount, which is awesome and is certainly easier on me than doing 5 out of 5, because 5, that doesn't leave you a lot. And then if you don't want to do 4.5, you just want to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It can be, how much does this bring it down from a 5, and does it bring it to a 4? And context for fun, what you're saying is that if there's gameplay issues, at some point you have to say, well, it is a 4 out of 5 because those would bring it down to you. Well, and they didn't do a good job in context. Hang on. I just want to describe one thing, because I saw another example of this with the Crew. I saw an article that said the Crew 3 is better than Forza Motorsport in many ways. And then I read the review, and it was like, driving, cars, sound, music, and control are worse than Forza. And I was like, what? Like that. And so it's almost like the score almost matters a little less to me than the titling sometimes of an article. Yeah. You know, the score, I might see a 5 out of 5 and be like, okay, the fun factor, the get in was easier, what have you. So you gave it a 5 out of 5, but sometimes it's the titling that really stuns me, where I'm like, oh, wow. And matter of fact, that was the first the first article I clicked for the Crew. And then I read it and was like, what? None of that it's not even in the article. And you're saying all these are worse. So what parts are better? And it was like, oh, the playlists were better, which is something I'm hearing replicated. Sorry, go ahead, Abssi. I was just saying I saw.
No, you hit all the points I wanted to talk about. Yeah, you hit them.
Yeah, it's sort of weird when you look at this, how you rate it. I think with fun factor, it's always easy because you can, just like Starfield. I had some issues with Starfield, still ready to buy, but it was like, and those issues are real. Like you look at them and you're like, that's a real issue. But at the same time, well worth my money. But with score numbers, it's really difficult. And honestly, that's why I think a 1 to 100 works way better, because a 1 to 100 you have more
granularity.
Nuance. Yeah.
Isn't it?
Well, you're kind of stuck now with the numbering system. And you can't do anything about it as a reviewer that is using the numbering system. You're kind of stuck to basically 6 to 10, and below that is basically garbage, right? 5 isn't the average middle anymore, and you can't.
Some people choose different. Aggregate. Sorry,
I'm not talking about 5 stars or anything, 4 stars, 3 stars. Yeah, but I'm saying in like the 10, because of how Metacritic takes the aggregate, you're kind of stuck in the, and because of how other people are reviewing it, it needs to factor in where if you gave this a 5, but and another reviewer would have given it an 8, so your 5 is the same as that reviewer's 8, it just wouldn't work in today's like reviewing.
Yeah, they're aggregating themselves prior to Metacritic, is what you're saying. They are, by looking and taking in other people's content, they are actually aggregating their score prior to giving the score prior to it going to Metacritic, which is the actual problem. But it is very difficult to get out, because if you do switch, then everybody has to go, okay, they've switched their scoring system. Now let's say we went from 1 to 10 to 1 to 100. Well, what does that really mean? Is a 4.5 the same as a 95? And the big problem is when you say the same as, it's a different game. So it's impossible to be the same as.
Yeah. There's no A/B test.
We humans want the easy to digest thing. It's just the way we work.
Like 0 to 10, the median, the median of that is 5, right? But now you can't use that because the average now is skewed, right? Because like an average game now is a 6, or 7. So 7 became the midpoint. The intersection, basically.
And it's funny because even when I stepped in and did my review system, I've seen now multiple people switch to like that kind of review system. And I'm not saying I led, I'm saying we all saw the same thing. Maybe they did see mine, whatever. I've had people say, can I use yours? And I'm like, don't, because it doesn't make sense for you. But it does make sense in the way I talk to you guys, where I even used to use Rent, because you can still do Redbox and a couple other places, but changed it to like deep sale for the most part, but that still resonates as a word for me. If I said, hey, it's $60, it's maybe when it's 10,
a tangible thing, man.
Yeah, it's a tangible thing where the scores are very difficult. Like numbered scores are weird for
because
a
also
lot of things.
You have to factor this in. Well, a lot of people are having conversations like comparing the review scores. Oh, you gave this an 8, but before you gave that one a 10. And it's not, they're not meant to be relative, but you can't help but do that because it's a fucking number. One is lower than another, no matter what, right?
We there are all sorts of perceptions. No, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, with the numbering, there are all sorts of perceptions that happen automatically. Whereas with your system, it's decoupled from that.
Yeah.
So for example, when someone says it's a 5 out of 5,
and I was like, I'm a 10 for this and an 8 for this. That's going to be confusing to everybody. It just doesn't make any sense. So for me, you look at the date that the review was done, and then you look at the price at that time. And you're like, all right, that works. And then 6 months later, if it's dropped in price and I said, wait for a sale, well, guess what? It is now on sale it's pretty easy to, and with Fun Factor, I think the context a lot of people have not switched. And I'm going to be brutally honest, man. I thought Fun Factor or those contexts would have caught on by now, because to me, Fun Factor is what a lot of us talk about. How many of us, and we'll see people in chat being like, oh, it's this game's terrible or whatever. And you're like, is it really terrible? Or is it just not up to whatever your example is? But what we get with a lot of reviewers is they're just still not talking about Fun Factor. They're still not, so they're not saying, okay, this game isn't great, but it is super fun anyway. And then you can be like, okay, great, the game is fun. I get it. You worked over these issues. The game is still enjoyable. And then you explain why. And I'm sure I've messed up where I've said it's a blast and maybe not done my best at saying what parts I'm liking or why it's a blast, why it overtakes the higher score, or why it overtakes the lower score and goes to the higher score. And you have to add the context. But what's weird to me is that a lot of people almost want to add less context. And I'm worried that people are worried about the social hit back.
Yeah,
I mean, we even saw IGN do a friggin' Twitter, thing explaining themselves. And first of all, I will never crumble under that. I'll be like, fuck you, man. It's a buy. I don't care what you say. And I'm not going to explain myself more than the review. I've explained it in the review. And, for the most part, I see people saying, okay, I get it, even though I don't agree. It's like, all right, that's the best we can do. But if you're sitting there trying to explain yourself, there's probably a problem. And it could be a problem just in that you're letting the input get back to you. And I'm not saying we don't make mistakes, but I'm saying when we see it a lot of times, it's like, well, maybe there's an issue, with the scores. Maybe there's an issue with, you need to start announcing that from now on, a mediocre game is going to be a 5, and you're going to have to deal with it. And it's going to be a year or two of uncomfortable discussions.
Adaptation.
Yeah.
Dude, I remember a time where, a game would come and review at 7, and I'd be like, holy shit, this is pretty good.
For sure.
8?
Yeah.
8 and above this is a masterpiece. Yep. Like, 9 is just, so fuck, man. Yeah, but I just the thing with I'm catching myself more and more not invested in Metacritic or Open Critic ratings or any of that. Like, with the way the game industry is being, or how people are enjoying games right now, it seems like a game has to be for everyone or not. Like, it either has to be for everyone, and we all hate when games streamline and make it for everybody. So I don't know why people are making a big deal about a game only attracting some people over others. You know what I mean? And that whole type of, dude, Atomic Heart came out and it got like 7s across the board, or not across the board, as like an aggregate, and it was like one of my favorite immersive sims I've played. So it's just I'm just catching myself more, not like kind of leaning away from this critiquing of games in the industry right now.
I think that feedback is simply because it's easy to get tired, where you're like, I'm tired of comparing this. I just sort of need to know the data. So it's like the score. And even when I say it, I'm like, I said it was a buy. I said it was worth my 60. That doesn't mean it'll be Pentiment. We talked about that prior to the starting of the podcast, where I'm like, listen, I know it's a good game, so I'm going to say, if you like this, it's a buy, but it is certainly not a buy for me. It is a good game. Like, you can, and I don't like to do that very often, your opinion. But I did say on that one, I was like, okay, there's not enough to explain this particular score, but I can see that because it's very niche too. A lot of games aren't niche. Like you said, a lot of games try to, even Ghost of Tsushima, a game I loved, a lot of it was generic
in the way everybody.
But it was, and they, for example, one of the things we always ding on Ghost of Tsushima is the fucking stances.
The stances.
The stances were there to allow people who don't do Dark Souls or whatever to sort of figure it out. Big guy, ox stance, or whatever the fuck it was called, right?
Yeah.
So, and though we all liked it, and it only switched one or two things, it made it easier for a lot of those people who just jump in. Somebody was asking what the percentage is for a wait for a deep sale. There is no percentage. For a wait for a deep sale, it means if I bought the game for 60, if I feel not ripped off, but I feel like this is probably worth $20 because it's got bugs or it's got issues, then that's what I'll say. It is really not at all numbers. And that's one of the things I try to explain people is it's not going to work. It is not science.
There's
That's
no
the
conversion.
problem. It's so difficult for people because we've all been brought up to everything else is flowery but math. Yeah. That's all we've been told all our lives. Math is the one true truth. If aliens talk to us, it'll be in math. And so everybody's like, okay, then that means a 10 is a 10. And everywhere else in reality, a 10 is a 10. If somebody says this is $100 at a store, unless you're, buying a car, it is $100. And so we're accustomed to that. And so when you get into games and interactive media, like, for example, I saw people saying, oh, bugs don't matter to me. And I'm like, I don't know how they couldn't matter to you. Because if it affects the story delivery, if Megan Fox's voice affects your entire enjoyment of the game, as long as you explain it, it should be in there. And to see people say, I just ignore a vast swath of the problems, then I'm like, I'm going to probably ignore your rating. I may take your context, but there's a very good chance I won't care if it's a 70 or a 60 even, because, or 100, because, you may know the game is buggy. You may know the game's got some issues. Cyberpunk is a good example of that. There were so many bugs in Cyberpunk.
I think the Cyberpunk release changed things.
It did change.
For the industry.
Cyberpunk for sure changed game reviews.
Changed a lot. Well, first of all, the thing it changed a lot is that a lot of companies right now are using the same fucking JPEG format to apologize for stuff. But other than that, like the cynicism from people about games, you're not allowed to be hyped for games. Don't be excited for games. And just like, oh, this is definitely going to come out like trash. There's also on the review side where I don't know what the fuck they're doing, honestly, in the review side. I feel like they're still kind of trying to take teams and they're trying to see like who, by and large, what is the larger majority of people that like something versus dislike. I don't know if that's changing a lot, but it's definitely changed a lot of things on how we view new releases, especially from AAA devs.
And there's also a pressure, and I totally see this, like for review, I'll see somebody say, like, no lie, I rated a game a wait for sale one time, and a person pretended I rated it a buy. And they wanted people to read that as the first comment. And so you will get those people that are just not anarchists, they're just assholes. Or they'll say, well, you didn't say this. And I'll be like, I said that exactly. Like those exact words were used. What are you talking about? And you find out they didn't watch anything. So there's that too. And then they have a voice and they can cause issues. And I think some game companies, it's like if it's a multi-million-dollar industry, you need to make sure there's accuracy. And that includes how many bugs you had. It also includes, did you enjoy it? But there's a disconnect. And I don't know if the disconnect will ever be fixed. And I'm not 100% sure it needs to. I just think context is needed. And Cyberpunk was a big issue. But I think overall, when you look at it, it's always going to exist. It exists in movies. It exists in whenever a number is translated to a person or a discussion, it's a disaster, man. It's a disaster. It's just like, it never works. So I wish people would, just switch to maybe not a score and you just say, I've seen car reviews where they have stars or not stars, but pros and cons. And they don't at the end say it's worth whatever. They just say, here's the pros and cons of this car. And I'm like, okay, I can get behind that. Because they give facts and math in the context.
Or maybe just like this, that, or this.
Dude, somebody's going to say, why'd you give this a thumbs up and not this one?
Yeah,
right?
Because then there's just...
Fuck it, you're fucked, dude. You're fucked.
An out of 3 scale, it becomes the same thing.
Yeah. Moving on from there, it's a good discussion. We'll have to see about Liza P. There were some issues, like I said, with just how it all came down. But I'd like to know if anybody here, maybe next podcast, what you thought of that game. So then there was a Sony event, and we were all told there wasn't going to be much, and boy, did they deliver not much. Like it was just like, here's some games, and I just wonder why you do the state of play without doing the state of, like, I feel that if you're gonna spend the time to do an event, it would be great to do the event and have an event. And instead, it's not an event, it's some trailers.
I would agree with you, except that the state of play bar has been set so low routinely. Like, it's almost every state of play, it's a very low amount of exciting stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's because I don't like to do a video for no reason. So I'm like, why is a major company doing, go ahead, Absy, I'm sorry.
I'm with these shows. I've always been just kind of like
Low.
easygoing.
Yeah.
Very, very low. And I just feel like not every show has to be like, if they want to show stuff or do some marketing thing. I mean, they showed some more stuff about their 2 biggest games coming out or whatever. I'm like, fuck
Final
it. Okay,
Fantasy
I'll see
stuff
more.
was definitely cool.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was awesome.
I went from like these levels of hypes to fucking
For sure.
this much.
I
dude.
agree.
Yeah.
I agree. That was definitely
They showed a lot of
saved
stuff.
the state of play in a way.
I'm
but
also
I
more
actually,
excited for Spider-Man too. Like both of those.
Yeah,
just-
you said that. I remember you saying that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Spider-Man 2 just looked what? It just captured you because you got to see the more.
Well,
combat,
at
or-
first I was like, kind of like God of War Ragnarok, where it was like, oh, it's just more God of War, you know. It's like, nah. But the first trailer was like, oh, cool, we have like Venom stuff. I'm kind of excited for that. And then when I saw more, and it kind of just reminded me of why I liked the first one so much with its gameplay and combat, but with more stuff. And I was like, oh shit! And the date is, you know, we're near. We're like a month away or so. So I'm getting more excited as we approach. Yeah, but it's definitely not on my most. I think what the next big game I'm excited for is Stalker 2. Like that's like the big thing.
Right.
Yeah.
I personally I already thought Spider-Man looked cool, and they showed 65 suits. 65 different Spider-Man suits, I think. Yeah, I saw a number where somebody had counted them or something. And
That's
I don't know
one of the
about
best
you
things
guys.
about hero games.
oh,
I
for
was
sure.
just gonna say it was one of my favorite parts of that game.
Yeah,
Unlocking
yeah.
new suits.
It's dude, every even back in the PS2 and shit, those Gauntlet games, like all the Lego ones, I think they had them. I don't know if they did, but a lot of Marvel games, the best thing, even the old Spider-Man games, is just like unlocking new suits.
Yeah.
In game, and it was. Dude,
I would
remember
agree.
Spider-Man on the PS1, and it
Yeah.
had so many different suits that you would get. Yeah.
Dude,
Yeah.
and they don't do the microtransactions for the most part.
Yeah.
So it's just like I think they have maybe a early suit for buying it, pre-ordering, whatever.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
But overall, what I saw looked incredible. And somebody was asking about the save game for Final Fantasy. Yeah, they made it clear you can't use a save game in an
It's a
interview.
complete sequel.
It's a complete.
Yeah.
It's balanced different, so they're not taking different people's saves. Which, like it or hate it, that is the way it is. I don't like it, but I do understand what they're saying.
You understand?
I'm
yeah,
not
same. Because it's like, oh,
excusing
imagine the
them.
balancing issues.
Yeah.
yeah. If they did change a lot, even because we've seen in the combat, one of the big things they changed is allowing you to do the bind attacks and shit with someone else, and you know, a lot of new characters and stuff. So
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh,
Voodoo
man, they
says
showed a lot of
ACG
fun
lost all
shit.
credibility in a Starfield review. Hey, I'm still playing Starfield, so goodbye. No loss
Just
on
because you
my
don't
side.
like something, it's like your opinion isn't, you know, copied. We literally we're just talking about that before.
Yeah,
you know?
but I
And you
mean,
can like what
a
you like,
lot of
and
people-
just be a civilized person, not be a fucking idiot. Because
A lot
you
of
literally,
people are
when
not
you say stuff like
civilized.
that, you like, I read it and I'm like, holy shit, someone's IQ is actually under 10. Like, this guy is such a fucking moron. You know what I mean? So, but you know, it's how it is.
I
sometimes.
think when you look at the games, moving on from there, because I do find that stuff funny, but moving on from there,
Yeah.
when you look at Spider-Man, personally, I've always been, I loved Spider-Man, the original. I loved Miles Morales. I thought both those were incredible superhero games as their own. And I do get that Miles Morales is shorter. I did see a lot of complaints. You know, whatever. I still felt my purchase was definitely worth it, so I'll say that. But with Spider-Man 2, it looks like the true sequel to Spider-Man that I mean, it looks like a true sequel. It's like, we got two people. They did state it is not instantaneous. It is near instantaneous. Fine, whatever. I don't even care if it's instantaneous. The ability to do both of those, the ability to have all those suits, to jump back into a bigger, as Absy said, because I was bitching in the video. I was like, well, I don't like the flying suit. And then Absy was like, well, it's a bigger city. And I was all right, I get that. I do like the swinging. I'm not a big
that's
fan
the
of
thing
air
though,
suits,
right?
but I
Do you
do
think-
understand it's a bigger city.
Like, maybe it's just an option, right? Like, you could just swing if you want, if you just are enjoying that, or if you want to get like through far, large open areas, you just, you know, turn it, because there are some areas as well, like the parks, that don't have buildings and stuff you can swing on, which that would be useful there, right?
And it did look really good just when you fast travel, because it goes from the map view and it collapses into the city itself.
Yeah.
Like the way that looks.
Those guys know how to nail the superhero feel. That's what I just cannot wait. Hush Out Ghoul, $5 super chat. Spider-Man 2 looked like Assassin's Creed Spider Edition with all the map indicators. So that is absolutely something we brought up when we were talking about it in the stream, was that when they showed all the map indicators with the new eye HUDs that both Spider-Man had, I was for a moment a little disappointed, but not disappointed in like, I was disappointed. I was worried. Are we going to have a bunch of collectibles? I wasn't disappointed. I was like, oh, that's interesting. We'll just have to see how it comes up. But I do know why people were like, saw that and were all, what exactly is going on? Are we going to have like 85 things to do in collectibles? And when they did mention that you got your Twitter still and people will call and ask for a certain Spider-Man, I'm not bothered by it, but I was a little, so if you like a certain Spider-Man, I do understand why they would want you to sometimes be the other guy, but I was a little nervous in how that's going to play out. Like when they call and they say, I only want Spider-Man to help me, I don't want Miles Morales to help me. And I'm like, well, guess what? You're getting Spider-Man.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you're in trouble. You need help.
Yeah, you're going to get B-level. But yeah, man, Spider-Man does. I agree with you. I can definitely see why, just for a second, you would think, oh, there might be a lot of collectibles, but I think overall don't need to worry about it too much. We'll just have to see. I'm excited for it. It looks awesome. And that's another thing is all these companies are releasing good games, whether they're exclusive, whether they're like PC only, whether they're across all of them, like Baldur's Gate's now on PlayStation. We're going to get an Xbox version. There's a lot of good games, man.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's nuts.
By the way, what worries me more than collectibles is actually the mini games, because like those activities you had to do throughout the city.
Those.
Oh, well, I like some of them.
I see what you're talking.
A lot.
You mean
but if I have to smell
city farts?
Yeah, if I have to smell one more fart,
I get you.
The honestly, I wasn't even, dude. The gameplay carried that game for me. I only did those side quests because I wanted more opportunity to fight people
swing and
swing around. I really hope they step it up this time around for sure. I really hope there's more valuable side questing. And they said like you can receive calls now, and sometimes it'd be for either Spider-Man, sometimes it'd be for one
That's
of them,
cool.
and stuff like that.
I do agree. Game On says side content is Insomniac's weakest area, and I would say in all their games, I would agree. That is,
it's a good point, right?
By the way, can still be stronger than Saints Row. The remake of Saints Row.
Sure.
That's the thing, is the moment he said weakest, I'm sure somebody's like, oh my God. And you're like, no, you don't understand.
No, Insomniac's weakest.
It's Insomniac's weakest, which I'm going to tell you right now, many companies wish their main quests were at the level of Insomniac's weakest. It's just like when we say a game sold okay, and you look at the score and you're like, I bet you a lot of companies would love the low bar from this other company for their sales. So it makes sense. It is. Insomniac's weakness is definitely their side content. Smelling city farts and swinging. Even if I wanted to do it, I still was like, oh man, it was that I wanted to fight those guys, like you said, and that's great. I just wish they had crouched it in a more interesting,
or better context.
thing.
Yeah, that's all they need.
Better context. Yeah, more interesting.
Essence,
context.
What makes, because everything has a gameplay loop, but what
Exactly.
separates side quests from being good or bad is the context. Why am I doing this? That is the only. You can be.
True.
It can have the same thing of fighting enemies all the time, but the context of why you're doing it, it just lends to the world building.
Yeah, the story you're able to tell yourself about what you're doing in a way matters a lot too.
That's why there's a difference between when we all talk about repetitive or gameplay loop. And that's why I mention gameplay loop sometimes in a review, because I'm like, this is the gameplay. The loop for this game is, for some people, will be repetitive. But if you're enjoying, like Absy said, he enjoyed the fight enough that he did those things, that's going to be a different branch. It's like a choose your own adventure, where it's like one guy's going over here, and it's like, boom, this makes sense to Absy, where I liked the game, loved the game, but that was a little less than. And it's like, okay. And maybe they look at it and they hit the Absies of the world and they're like, this is good enough. But I don't think Insomniac ever does that. I think Insomniac usually is probably self-critiquing to the point of going, you look at all their past games, that is something that's been brought up with a lot of their past games. Yeah. So they would hopefully want to fix it.
It's how much you connect with that gameplay loop, right? Like, for example, I enjoyed 15 hours in Starfield of going to random planets, surveying them, and looting shit. And I find that extremely fun. And I like the repetitive nature of it and just increasing my inventory and supplies and stuff. But other people might think it's completely boring, and that's completely fine. You know what I mean? Because it is repetitive.
Wannabe Dev Ron 50, ACG gained all credibility with the good reviews. Well, thank you very much, but we will disagree. So please do not leave if we disagree once, which I always see. Like, I agreed with him, but now he likes this game. I also want to say the funny thing about Starfield, I have 250 plus hours in it. And so when somebody does get mad about it, I'm like, well, why you're mad? I spent 50 more hours playing a game I like.
Yeah, enjoying the game.
It's like, if you want to be mad, I get it, because I've been mad when I've read something. It usually takes a lot for me to stop. And there is certainly things I've stopped doing because after a while I get a pattern where I'm like, okay, we just don't agree. That's, we're just no longer in sync. But I usually go, we were in sync at one time, so maybe I'll check them out again. But when you look at something like Starfield, I think, speaks for itself for those people who like it, because it is sticky as shit for those people who like it. And I don't know, I've explained it. When I said in the review that all these other titles have good this, good that, but for whatever reason Starfield has Bethesda, I meant that. Starfield there's something about a lot of their games. Is it as good as Skyrim's exploration? No. But it's still something about it where that works. And who it's working for, it seems to be working insanely for, even above me.
I think Bethesda, there's a lot of new Bethesda enjoyers and old Bethesda enjoyers, and from Oblivion to Skyrim, or from Fallout 3 to Skyrim, Bethesda made the switch from being more quest-centric and having more quest-centric gameplay and quest design to being exploration-based. And Starfield, this is why Phil Spencer said it's more like Oblivion than Skyrim, went back to that quest-centric stuff.
Yeah, right.
So I think the people that like Bethesda for that exploration aren't getting what they want from Starfield. Yep. So they're saying they're regressing in that sense, where I think their quest design is way better than Starfield. It's more like pre Starfield Bethesda.
I also, when you look at all of these games, Spider-Man, Final Fantasy, all of these titles, every single title just does have that repetitive loop, and it is a game for a reason. Because you're learning.
Monster Hunter, one of my favorite games of all time, dude.
Yeah, and you're learning and then repeating the loop and getting better, or enjoying yourself more, or diving into more stuff.
Layering it with new stuff.
Yeah, layering with more stuff. And what I took out of this year, at least so far, is that even if a game isn't scoring well, what I have noticed is that there isn't as many anthems. There isn't as many. It feels like 2023's had some bad games. Redfall.
We've had some blunders.
Redfall is a blunder. Yeah. Right? Redfall's a blunder.
Yeah, and Immortals of Avian.
And Gollum, obviously.
Immortals got some recommends to get it, which blew me away. Okay. But yeah, I would agree that Immortals probably didn't hit, but I don't know if the expectation was near Redfall. Redfall is one of those anthems, right? Where the expectation was a thing.
High.
Redfall, true. I want to reverse that before anybody jumps on me. Shit.
For sure.
What I meant was the setup should have caused us to think that. The setup and who was making it should have caused people to be excited. But you are absolutely right. There were red flags day one. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
absolutely. with Starfield, there's something about it that feels like putting an old glove on. That looks completely different, but in a way, like, I just slid into my Bethesda mode immediately. I just understood. I would talk to someone, and I just understood that I was starting a series of quests that belonged to a faction and that had some interplay with other. Like, it just kind of all makes sense. Doesn't it? Like, in a way, like, it feels very familiar is what I'm trying to say, and even though everything is different looking.
Not only that, they kept some classic RPG things in there that a lot of new RPGs are changing that I really, really don't like. And the biggest one is level scaling. I hate those new RPGs with every enemy is scaling to your level. There's no under, there's no over. When you level up, you don't feel more powerful. I'm so glad that I could run into like high level enemies and run away, or run into low level enemies and be like, this is what I am now. Or going in and saying, oh my God, these enemies are level 30, I'm level 1. You go back there at level 30 and you're like, oh, mow down, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I love that shit in like old RPGs and Elix and stuff like that isn't really there in new RPGs. And maybe some people just don't like that old stuff. So
Yeah, no, I agree with that. That definitely there's some issues where the mowing down of difficulty, or sorry, mowing down of the up and down
Like
is
balancing
worse.
everything.
I do like I've even talked about it very openly that some games I like a little broken so that people have to figure out a way around it. And when I see somebody do their patch notes and they're like, oh, this gun cycles at 0.20 too fast, and I'm like, really? Figure it out. Like, that happens in real war, where somebody will go up against somebody else who's just got a better gun. It's like, that's your job, man. It's like, it's a war, or, figure it out. If it's drastically screwed up, sure. But we see a lot of people trying to balance everything, which, by the way, is why a lot of games where they have classes start to feel like it's all generic. You're like, oh, this is the healer, but everybody can heal. Oh, this is the blah, 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 but everybody can blah, blah, blah. And you're like, well, then why would I just be the cleric? Which, by the way, Baldur's Gate has an issue with, which is like, I think the cleric's the least used character. Somebody here was saying that Golem's got some better models than Skyrim. It does, and it's got some way worse ones. That's games, my friend. Skyrim or Starfield, sorry. Starfield's got that issue where it's got the great looking characters or really good. It's got the mids, and then it's got the horror shows.
It's got the Hollywood people. And then like the plebs,
and then it's got people who probably gonna have to sleep their way to the top, right? It's just the only way it's gonna work. It is crazy, and they need to, that is a big ding against them. The citizens are done that way, I'm sure, for performance scaling, but man, there's some nasty looking people. There's some rough ass looking citizens.
It's weird how your brain tricks you a lot, because a lot of the time I'm out in the crowd. And I am seeing the whole versus the individual. You know what I mean? So I don't know if you've ever noticed, but if you watch cartoons or anime and you see a big crowd, very often they don't have faces. Painted. Right. Because you see the crowd and not the detail, the individual.
Well, and I mean, Starfield cities are 10 times better than Skyrim, even though Skyrim looks, the characters might look better, maybe, but you got 16 people, or you have
feeling of it being populated and alive.
Well, let's be honest, a lot of people pretend they're reviewers, but they're not, but they play a game like they are, and they start nitpicking like that kind of stuff. As a reviewer, it is my job to say, what does it feel like as a whole? Oh, and there are also some tech issues here and there, which is exactly what I tried to do with Starfield.
They could have been a bit better, though. Holy shit, they have crazy eyes.
No, they absolutely could have been better. There is the but that I'm going to add isn't really even a but to this. They could have been better. However, many people are not going to sit and look at a character you can't even talk to in the first place. They are going to be excited by a city feeling like more people are moving around. And the focus is different. But
a lot of these videos, I feel like people don't do this at home and like don't care that much. But honestly, I like attention to detail, and I think a lot of attention to detail is great. But in the sense that attention to detail, for me, is like, allow me to do things and have it reflected to me in a narrative way, or if I do this quest in a certain order, let it affect it that way. But a lot of the videos, Crobecat does this a lot, and it's not anything like wrong, but they like to show like very, very specific things that by and large doesn't matter that much, but when you see it played out versus like a 2010 game, you're like, holy shit, such as like the splashing of the water, like the AI and the NPCs and all these little issues that get exasperated when you like kind of compare it to an older
that's
game.
why when I do the review, I'll take a picture of the crappy face when I'm talking about graphics and saying, as a world, this looks good, but blah blah blah. And the thing is the but blah 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 is taken to make an entire video elsewhere. But that, as in, they've picked out those points. And you also have videos, I think it's a little less grabby, so it's not done as much on YouTube, but you do have a lot of videos where people are like, here's all the good stuff. And you just have to take the good with the bad. They don't hit as much. They don't become viral as much, because that's just the way we go. I like looking at games with issues, even if I like the game. So when I see, like, for example, when I was playing Starfield, I was like, oh my God, that guy's face is just, but when I come out of our Discord's pretty generic, where they're okay with, for the most part, they're like, whatever. You almost never hear anybody say this is terrible. They'll say there's an issue. But when I talk to the people outside in my LAN group, which is 2,000 people, none of them mention that ever. they're mentioning like, does the A hold button work on the PC? I'd like to be able to hold A. Does how does everything, you know, come together? And oh, I had a really good time doing this, or I didn't like doing this. They're not. It's we're talking on a podcast about games and on a reviewer podcast. But when I come out of this, I love talking to my friends who are normal. And I'll just call them that.
Yeah, dude, I wanted
to
actually mention that because I play with a normie all the time. Normie being like, or I play with normies or have friends that are normies that basically do not, you know, aren't part of this schizo, like nitpicky, crazy gaming in the, you know, community. That they're just like, they get games and they're like, yo, this is dope, man. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
You know, there's no like, or oh my God, I didn't like this one thing and this feature was very badly implemented. And you know what I mean? Which I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm doing it in a nerdy voice just because it's like funny and shit. But there's a lot of games outside of our space right now that we're talking about. Or that we're talking in that just like kind of fucking, you know, just play games, dude. You know what I mean?
$5 super chat. I have an issue buying so many games on both consoles. I have a massive backlog. Any advice on sticking to one game? If you like it and you're not sticking with it, that is interesting. If you like it and aren't sticking with it, because I'm assuming he means games he likes. I don't.
Is it that thing where the shiny new kind of grabs your attention over the...
Don't buy as many games. There you go. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only way you're not going to bounce is if you have no access to it. Because, yeah, it's a shiny new thing. It's the, you know, I know a lot of people who want the new iPhone, but if it's for cell phone calls, at some point you have to be like, this phone works just like my LG stylus from 8 years ago. What am I getting it for? Oh, it's extra megapixels for pictures. And you're like, how many pictures do you take? None. Oh, well, why are you getting it?
For this stuff, it's kind of like you're saying, it's similar to when I think I want to buy something. I always do a double take.
Yeah.
So I say, if tomorrow I still think it's a great idea, I'll go for it. It doesn't mean it will, you know,
go 100%,
away. But a good percentage of times, I have, you know, backed out of a...
I've been searching for a car for 8 months, Johnny. Because I'm very good, to the chagrin of everybody I know who gets mad at me, that I don't just go and get one. And I'm like, well, when I get one, I will know that I have made the choice, and then it's on me. It's just what I want. Yeah. But yeah, I would say I get where you're coming from.
Yeah. And the FOMO can be tough because all your friends are talking about a new game. Yeah.
But you know where the FOMO is tough for me, Johnny? When you guys talk about World of Warcraft or something, an older game. I don't get FOMO on new games ever. I have no FOMO for Mortal Kombat.
Okay, do you get it when I blab about League of Legends? You're like, dude,
maybe not that. Maybe not that.
Nobody should. Oh my God.
Maybe not that. But if you guys were all talking and you were talking about like World of Warcraft, which I was very good in the old days at the multiplayer, and I really had a good time. One of the few games I enjoyed the multiplayer. When you guys talk about playing World of Warcraft, or there's Classic or whatever, Lucitan's in there talking about World of Warcraft, I'm like, I get FOMO for that.
I get FOMO when you guys are talking about like KOTOR and Jade Empire and all those like RPGs I missed that were great that everybody talks about. Yeah, and I can't. I don't really gel well.
Or Remnant 2.
Play now. Yeah, Remnant 2. I'm still. I still want to play that.
Yeah. It's. I think it's really awesome to have FOMO because it's also that's just excitement, but it goes too far. It like to me, I also like the journey. I like finally getting. So when I don't have FOMO as much as like, man, I can't wait to play that. I can't. And then when you do, you're like, oh man, that's so, that's so cool. But some people take FOMO to they need to buy it and sit on it. And I'm also a big believer in that. In no way, shape, or form do I have a backlog ever. I just do not. I do not believe in backlogs. So I don't have the back and forward. Where some people, they might get FOMO and buy it and never play it and have a backlog, and then it guilts them. To me, if I get it and I don't play it, I have no guilt. I'm like, I made that purchase decision. That's on me. I'm not going to worry about it. And sometimes you'll play that old game and be like, oh, wow, this is, especially now where after Mortal Kombat, there isn't, I think we have a week or two until something big comes. So there's that week where maybe you'll look at an old game and go, oh, now's the time to.
Cyberpunk DLC, I think, is the next
Cyberpunk
big thing.
DLC is the next big one. That's September 26th.
Did you see that this game that looks like Disco Elysium, but it's like kind of post-apocalyptic?
Yeah, I've talked about it a lot. I think it looks awesome. It looks like Wasteland
Looks
and
so
Disco
good.
Elysium mixed together.
What is the game?
Yes, exactly. That's what I said.
Broken Roads.
I forgot, dude.
Broken Roads, I think.
I need to wishlist it. Dude, it looks the art style is very much like Disco Elysium. I think the dialogue, there's a lot of philosophical, like you could, there's like, I saw like a Machiavellian answer, whatever. So it's something that I was like, wow. And it's coming in the midst of all these massive games. It's like, holy shit, when am I gonna find the time to play it, right?
Dean Rivera, $5 super chat. So I like every game I buy. When I was little, we didn't have money. Now when I'm grown, I just keep buying. Okay, so here's the thing. I get you, because that is exactly where I was. We had really good years when I was a kid and really bad ones. However, I've removed the guilt. So I don't know how you'll do that, but I would say if you want to buy it and you support the dev and you think it's going to be good at some point, then I'm personally of the opinion, why have guilt about a video game? If it's causing you financial troubles, you need to figure it out, just like any addiction.
Yeah.
But
not only that,
if you have the money and buy it,
and if you're burnt out or stopped having fun with the game, don't push yourself.
Don't force yourself to play it. Yeah.
You don't have to, man. Like, just get your money's worth, or you know, I put 70 hours in this. I don't really want to go and finish it. Fuck it, dude. 70 hours, good. All right, I'm
exactly.
done.
And that's the thing is the finishing doesn't even mean paying attention. I have so many friends who will say, I got 100%. Oh, what'd you think about this? They have no clue. It's why I always joke about as reviewers, we need a fucking, like, an actual test.
Quiz?
Like, I don't care about platinums. I care about, like, do you know when the bad guy says this? What did you think? And it's okay, because you
can
paid
just
attention.
Like, look at a guide and just draw away.
And not only that, some games have guides. Some review games have guides. It's one of the reasons why, like, I'm always really careful on what PDF I open, because I'm like, I don't want to, and a lot of times they'll warn you spoilers ahead or whatever, and I'm like, I don't want to see how to beat something. Like, as a reviewer, it doesn't make any sense, because I can say, oh, this game was easy, and you're like, man, it seems hard. And it's like, if you were using a guide or what have you, then it's not really the same gameplay experience as most people, a good number of people will have. But looking back at Sony, the other game, I do want to talk about Final Fantasy. So like I said, the save games won't work, but what I saw looked awesome.
And they released more info about it, by the way. They talked about how the kind of, so they've spoken before about how it's like 100 hours around to beat it or something. But they did talk about a little bit more specifically how it's divided, and apparently it's going to be a 1-to-2 ratio. So the side content and the optional areas and stuff is going to be double the size of the main content, which is pretty normal for an RPG. So you're looking at around like a 30-hour main story with a 70-hour side content. It just seems to me like with the amount of mini games, it's going to be like a Yakuza Final Fantasy. You know? I mean, 7 had a lot of mini games, and if they just put that in the new remake, it's just we saw a lot.
What I saw looked awesome. I mean, it just it looked. We already know it's going to look pretty good.
So much different stuff in it, just a lot of fun stuff.
I think a lot of the areas and stuff are going to be switched around, moved around
from the original,
things like that. From the original,
we
got to see the polygonal those old.
What was that all about? I saw the polygons.
So that
and I was like,
from an arcade game. So there is a region that's called the Golden Saucer, where they have all these arcade games. It's a big arcade. Exactly. So that was one of the arcade games that you will play there.
SBZ $2 super chat. I love ACG reviews. No FOMO. I know what you're saying.
There you go. We know what you did there.
But
why that make me laugh?
When you look at what we're looking at for 2023, like personally as a gamer, other than Bizarre, BioWare, and Bungie from Microsoft when they did the 3Bs, that was 2009, 2013, whatever. I don't think I've ever seen a game or a year with just this, like everything hitting
plethora of
and
games.
What's so strange is 2024 already looks insane. Like,
bro, why
it's
the
ridiculous,
fuck? Dude, what the fuck, man? Did you see that Owlcat said that their game Warhammer 40K Rogue Trader is coming in December
in December
this year? Hello, what are you trying to do to me, man?
Yeah, it's going to be a lot. I like as Absy loses all of his hair.
Bro, I thought it was going to be late 2024 or something. What the fuck?
Yeah, no, and I mean they've done a lot of previews on that. They're very open about where it is, and I think with Owlcat, the only thing I'm going to worry about is performance and bugs. Yeah, but Owlcat had good games. Yeah, they've had good experiences and some pretty rough ones. I just hope there's aren't they the ones that did Path of the Righteous?
Yes.
I just hope there's no 6-hour fight in a tower like there was in that game.
Oh, good. Oh man, I'm so excited. And they made it seem like so usually with CRPGs the scope is narrow. Or not narrow, it's like fixed around a narrative. So, for example, BG3 asks you as a thief, what would you do in this narrative, or how would you influence this story? Versus like in Skyrim, as a thief, what would you do in this world? And the way they were presenting Rogue Trader, it was almost like, oh, you can be a pirate. You can.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in Rogue Trader that we haven't even seen. It's gonna be
sandbox.
Yeah,
it's and we don't really see many sandbox CRPGs, so that's gonna be cool.
I'm a hustler. Haha, I got it. I'm a hustler. $2 super chat. Will you review Armored Core? I did a short review for that. I just don't have the time. But I did like Armored Core. I think what I was worried about with Armored Core has come about, though, which is that, sorry about the ad. God damn this thing. It didn't add again. I don't know why it's not giving me the warning. But I think the big thing with Armored Core is it just got crushed into everything else. And it does, even if you're not super interested in one of these big games, that it was so easy to not get it and go, I'll get it later. It sold well, which is cool, but it had like the actual people that are probably continuing it is going to go down just by the sheer process of elimination and attrition that occurs because there's so many games. But yeah, it was a good, solid, better than any other Armored Core. Better than any mech game.
I loved
recently.
It, man.
Yeah, good, solid mech game.
Just a fun time.
Yeah, and it's cool to see that game do
That's
well.
That's a fun factor game.
Yeah, that is definitely because I get it that there's Armored Core
greater than the
fetus out
parts.
there, but it is very much there's times when you're playing it going, but it doesn't matter because you're playing it. And
the movement. Yeah.
And you'll look at other stuff and you'll be like, blah blah blah, but then you just sort of you're only there for 45 seconds or you're only there for a minute and then you're somewhere else or you're choosing something else to do. So Armored Core was a good solid mech game. It is a bit nichey though, I think, and that it sold well to them.
Definitely a bigger niche
though.
than old Armored Core though.
Absolutely.
They definitely had a way larger market, and a lot of the content creators for Souls games, because Souls games generated a whole new slew of content creators. They also played Armored Core, so it's definitely way wider than it was before. Yeah.
I think with Armored Core, they took some of the Dark Souls. They tried to add some mystery that I didn't like. I've talked about this before with some of their explanations of weapons and some of their fiction. But overall, I mean, it's probably one of the best mech games you'll play in the last 10 years. There's really nothing. I'm not deballing Armored Core. I'm just saying there's not much there, and what is there is BattleTech, which is CRPG style almost, turn-based, and then there's Mech Warrior, which was good, but
it's more of a slow pace.
It's a sim game.
Big mech.
Yeah. It's much more of a sim game.
Yeah, it's much more of a sim game.
Action games in general, I don't think I've ever played an action game like that.
No, it's like Virtual On, which is an arcade game from 25 years ago. Like, that's the last time I can remember a game. Well, Hawken, admittedly, I should, before somebody corrects me, Hawken is definitely, there's some, and in Titanfall, when you're in a mech, there's occasional feels a little bit like Armored Core, but Armored Core is its own thing. Yeah, Hawken was pretty fast. So before somebody, Hawken just wasn't great. Zeonic Front Mission. Oh, is that another mech game? Might have missed that one. I wonder how many AC6 Metacritic scores are inflated because of From's current reputation. I would say probably very little, because From this is not a typical From game. At least it's an older From game, because Armored Core.
I also don't know. People like From games because I think the games are good. I don't think there's a huge. I mean, there is a community, like a from community. I find sometimes online defending any fucking little thing they do. Like someone pointed out something they didn't like in like
Sekiro or something,
or Sekiro or this game, and people would be so vitriolic and stuff. But I don't think they're like at like Nintendo level of like complete love, and I don't know.
Right.
At least for me, I just find their games pretty good, and I didn't even like the original Souls games other than Demon Souls that much.
So talking about some of the other news, speaking of mech games, Titanfall 2 seems to have some work done. They've, if you guys have seen, they turned servers back on. They actually adjusted some of the graphics in a couple levels. So now there's this big question, is Titanfall 2 getting a free-to-play version? Or maybe just the multiplayer? Or are they looking at a remake? No one knows, but there's actually been 5 or 6 big steps. And this isn't like the Assassin's Creed Black Flag thing, which a lot of us thought meant there was a remaster because they removed it from Steam to buy, and people thought, oh, you know, Ubisoft is adding something. What it looks like with that game is they were making adjustments probably for Infinite, their front end, so that it'll work with all their, and also some fixes to Steam. But it looks like Titanfall 2 might have something coming up. It's definitely had
which is pretty cool, man.
More adjustments. Yeah,
it's pretty cool because I don't think there's another shooter quite like Titanfall 2 or Titanfall in general. I think it holds a very, very unique position in the shooter market, and it'd be smart to bring it into and make it relevant to compete with the other FPSs out there.
And then connected somewhat, but Stig left the Jedi Survivor team.
Yeah. The director for Star Wars.
Yeah, and he had said he wanted to see 3 titles there. I don't know,
trilogy.
And somebody can correct me in chat. I don't know how well Survivor did, but Survivor had so many technical issues, so many unbelievable technical problems. It was, that was one of the few games where I've been like, holy crap, this thing is in dire shape. So I don't know. I don't know if he left because of that, and he's like, maybe that he asked for 3, and they were like,
yeah, and he left the whole studio. I think.
No, he left the studio. He's done.
He wants to find other opportunities or something like that. That was his like closing statement.
Not his. That's the thing. It was the studios.
Oh, we don't know if it was the studios.
That is the question. So normally in the past couple years, it's always been the Twitter post from the creator getting in front of the company and saying, today's my last day at blah, blah, blah. He didn't. It was the company that said, we wish him well. Now, admittedly, that normally means, not normally, that sometimes means there was an issue behind the scenes when somebody says, we wish them well or what have you, and the person doesn't say anything. I don't know if he said something.
It's the blanket statement of like, I'm going to explore other opportunities. Yeah. I'm going for bigger and better things in life. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, we wish them well. And you're like, but do you not wish them well where you are? Obviously, you wish them well somewhere else. But it could also be something where he's like, listen, man, I don't want to, I don't want to be here if you're not doing, Jedi 2, or maybe, I don't know. He is the main
Survivor
person.
was pretty sus, right? With all its issues and stuff.
Dude, it was a disaster, man. I mean, it's got patched up here recently, but it had very legitimate problems all over the place and on multiple systems. It's a little like Callisto Protocol. Now, I do want to point something out because people have asked me about Immortals of Avium. Immortals of Avium laid off about 40% of their people. One thing you should remember is that in March of this year, they actually hired a bunch temporary to work on the game prior to its crunch and launch. It is not unknown to see 20 to 50% of people leave. So if you have 4 people working on music, when you are done and you are simply maintaining the game or patching the game, you do not need all the musicians. You do not need all the texture artists. So it is actually quite normal to see companies lay off, especially a company that's private like this. It's got an investor and it's indie, what have you. I'm not saying that's not an indicator of anything, but it happens with so many games. And then you add on that Immortals had a total of less than 800 people concurrent at any one time playing it. And I hate talking about the concurrent crap because I don't want people focusing on it. But if you put it all together, it could also
paints a rough picture.
So they're temp devs. Not all of them. I'm sure not all of them. And I don't want to down talk it. I just want to say every time a big game releases, you do see a layoff because that is quite literally a lot of them are temps built up.
And I wonder if they conflate layoffs with temporary contracts that are coming to an end. Do you know what I mean?
Right. I mean, that is, and by the way, those contracts will all end on the same day a lot of times. Like, that's what I used to, you do software development, you build up your team, and then when the team is done
like
and you're
the
in maintenance
fiscal
mode,
year ends or whatever.
Right. And by the way, and a lot of times it is on a certain date. We have contracts that is like on the 13th, this company is only going to pay us for 5 devs, no longer 10 devs. I mean, that's all I did prior to YouTube. It's normal. In any software development, it's normal because building takes more than maintaining. And that's just normal. But I'm not saying that that's not in any way, shape, or form connected to this. I'm just saying that is a normal thing. We'll have to wait until some people respond. Or what have you. It sucks regardless, right? I mean, some of them knew, I'm sure, because you know the contract. But I'm sure a lot of times it just, you lay people off. And that game didn't do well. Don't know any other way to talk around it. Like Immortals just doesn't seem to have sold well. Didn't launch well. We'll have
Mortals.
to see. Yeah. Speaking of that, there was 0 woke in that game.
In what game?
Immortals of Avium.
No. I'm not talking about like the actual. There's pronouns and shit. I'm talking about the no edge type of wokeism, like the type of shit, everything's just like completely hollowed out.
Generic, you could say. Generic, it was because I have actually seen people on the review saying like, oh, this is woke, this or that, and I think they mean the other thing. And I like, as somebody who played it, there's just, and I'm not saying I would care too much, but I would notice something, and I like, that's a game where you play it and you're like, it's not what this game is. It is just mowed down of any edge, and it's very generic even in their art style. And you need even with Starfield having issues, Baldur's Gates Act 3, you almost, in a weird way, you need that discussion to happen to like elevate, even if it's issues, because then people are interested sometimes. And
anything outside of just mid.
Right. Like, you need right now, you need to bring your A game, which, by the way, I think is why we're seeing Stalker and these. By the way, the people who I know who played Stalker thought it was legitimately good, and it's been delayed. And I think not because they're worried about being mid, but it's just too convoluted right now to release your game. It makes sense to say, listen, man, even if we do well, there's not enough money in people's wallets to buy $60 games in September. Like $300. I mean, that at some point you're looking at half your rent and you're like, this doesn't make any sense, for me to spend this. So makes sense. Tribes 2 people are talking about, man, that was a good game. Tribes 2 was awesome. Did you guys ever do Tribes? The Tribes mech games? Oh, so good, man. So good. Very much like Armored Core, which I think is what they're probably continuing on the discussion. I bounced off the older Stalker game because the RNG attached to shooting. Yeah, I mean, Obsidian Protocol had RNG attached to shooting. RNG attached to shooting is tough because a gamer thinks I aimed right. Yeah. And it didn't work. And by the way, real machine guns, if you fire one, it is even the best of the best take years to get good enough. They're not like a normal army grunt. They're like the guys on YouTube shooting 60,000 rounds a day or something crazy. Yeah, you do have some RNG in real life, but it's nowhere near what we see in some RPGs where you fire off.
That's such a great point. Yeah, because when you're in the game,
hang on, go ahead, Johnny,
go for it.
Or go ahead, Absy. Go ahead.
I prefer it like CS, where rather than recoil or bullet spread being random, you kind of get like each weapon has its own pattern, and then you learn the pattern and compensate for it so that you can have something consistent. Yeah,
true. Where I get that. Or RNG should be less. I don't know how they would do it. Like, I don't know how they would do it. But I like the idea of RNG being in shooting in some games, but I don't want 99% misses in XCOM. Like, I'll kill somebody if that ever pops up again. Go ahead, John. Yeah. We interrupt you. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that it is different because in the game, you have the reticle. So in a way, if you, like we were talking about the parries, like if you aimed correctly, you wanted to hit.
Yeah.
Right? Like the randomness there kind of detracts from the satisfaction of the skill honing. As you get better at the game, right, it feels good because you're now landing more shots or whatever. But if there's that randomness there,
But it does have a place, I think, and that's mostly in RPGs, because in RPGs you can invest in some stuff, like, hey, I want to invest into better gun control, like my character. So I think I can see like a use case for it where it's like, oh, I'm gonna be a better shooter because it's an RPG mechanic where I level up and I just become better at shooting, or my character does, which then translates to like less and less RNG maybe.
I mean, I like the way you said it, Absy, where it's like it's more about the recoil. It's not that you had the reticle there and you missed randomly. It's that your gun has more recoil because you're a worse shot. You haven't leveled up the the skill or whatever.
For sure.
Dude, if you ever see anybody fire the first shotgun, it looks like a chainsaw went off because they can't hit shit. And recoil takes a long time to get adjusted to, and you'll see somebody who's really good at one gun will take a little, even the best shooters, they might be able to hit more than somebody else, but it takes a while to get accustomed because the gun feels different, the grip feels different, what have you. I just am saying, I get where people are coming from because the game is a bit of a power fantasy and it wants you to know so let's say you pick shooter for your class and you're like, well, if I'm a shooter, why am I missing everything? Or you play a game where you feel crap at first and you're like, man, this is just not fun until and then you're almost forced to level it up where you're like, why didn't I just start? At some point you're like, why'd you make the first 6 hours unfun until I bought 10 points? But at the same time, they have to show the progression. It's very difficult. I would not want to balance a game like that. By the way, I bitch about XCOM. In no way, shape, or form, the only thing I've ever been able to figure out about XCOM is that misses should probably go away, but damage should be reduced if the chance is lower, which we've seen in some games where they've tried that. And I like that better than 99% chance to hit.
It might be a little bit less frustrating for sure. Yeah.
Dude, when you're right up against the snake guy and he's like, and he moves out of the way and you're like,
the snake people are ridiculous.
Oh, they're ridiculous, man. Which, by the way, I love the game. XCOM is, well,
and the universe is, dude, it's
DLC.
entropy, by nature it's entropy. There's always a chance of something happening. So
dude, how many times have I seen somebody firing at the range with a gun that they well oiled that misfires? It happens a lot, by the way. And you see it in war videos of real life where like it does, even an AK-47, which is known as basically the workmanship weapon, will have issues at times. It just, it depends on the weapon too. But it's all very cool to see.
Everything's percentage based. This is why like D&D is a thing where it's like everything has like a percentage.
There's a critical, there is a chance of a critical failure. Like it is real.
Or
it's
a crit,
just that XCOM had it a lot of times. I just feel like XCOM had it more times than it probably should have.
That 5% was just.
And you saw it and you knew. How many times did you see like the 95 or 99 feeling, and you're like,
I'm gonna miss it?
It felt cheaty, actually. Yeah. You know how some games it feels like Karmic Dice and Baldur's Gate, where people say, turn it off, turn it on, what have you? It felt like there was something going on in XCOM where there was a higher chance at that to miss than there was 50-50. And maybe it's just your brain thinking, oh, 50-50, I hit him. And maybe you're just remembering.
I don't know if it's confirmation bias. Like you only remember the times where
that's what I'm saying.
It really hurt that you missed that shot. But I have so many anecdotal memories of missing that shot and then losing a soldier because of it.
Yep. And it was always when you were 1 foot from the guy.
Yes.
You're like, and it's a shotgun.
In a way that the animation looks ridiculous because the gun is right up. Yeah. And then in the last second when he shoots, he moves like he missed. But
do you think if it was presented in a different way, you'd be more okay with it?
Yeah. Or like the damage mitigation thing you said.
I like damage. I think damage drop-off would work really well and be like, okay, I'm still going to do a point. And then you would have to balance for people who purposely went up to a guy and did 1 point. I'm okay with that because if I walked up to a guy with a shotgun and I hit him a couple times, it would kill them. Then you can balance around that with armor.
Yeah.
See, that's another thing. Armor, there should be a soak kind of thing. It's like, so this armor soaks to a point, and we see that a lot of times with ballistics tests on YouTube where, the armor will soak quite a number of shots and then sort of fail. I'm also okay with temporary armors, and I know a lot of people don't like that because it's easier to just have armor on. But it depends on the game, too, how difficult it is. Lorenzo, $2 super chat. You won my first ever super chat. Hello from Italy. Well, hello from Oregon. Where are you guys at right now? Give them where you're at. London and
London myself.
No.
Left town.
Left town. I don't know. Where are you? Where are you right now?
Right now, I am in SA, Saudi Arabia.
And where were you
I move
earlier?
around a lot.
Where?
2 weeks ago,
week?
I was in Dubai. A couple months ago, I was in Spain. I'm going to Italy in a couple months. My work just moves me around a lot. So, yeah, I've been.
Did you get to see Lindsay Lohan? She lives in Dubai. Did you get to hang out with Lindsay Lohan? Did you guys party? You guys didn't do a rave?
We did some coke a little bit, but other than that, I couldn't catch quite a lot of her. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Just do a little coke on the side. Actually, she just had a kid, I think.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
okay.
I think she moved
Coca-Cola.
there. I know people. Yeah, I know people. Actually, a lot of like movie stars and stuff like to live there because the press is zero compared to America, which is the press can get right up in your face here. I always see a video where like a press will get up in the face of an actor and the actor will push them and the press is like, okay, I'm going to sue. And I'm like, dude, I just wish the rule was gone. Just like, dude, press, if you're in the way, sorry, buddy, you got no legs now, man. You got in the way of my Ferrari. I just hate the shit where you can invade somebody's space like that. It's so uncomfortable. Yeah. It's just so creepy. RNG and BG3 did not match empirically. I started tracking it and it was 15% lower than the chance displayed on screen, or your rolls were lower. Trust me, I saw somebody roll 12 six-sided dice, completely different dice in a D&D game. It may appear that way. I don't know. Random numbers are hard to do on PCs too. You'll hear about it all the time. You'll hear them say like they're
random is very hard.
Like I think one of the guys was, or maybe not all, but they were doing random by testing the CPU's heat and like what came off the pins and then picking like random bits. You can do all
sorts of stuff like that, which is always like taking something that is analog or like
and taking the noise from it,
not discrete, taking the noise from it.
That's so great when you hear about that stuff because you think,
you know,
like,
what there was one case they had a wall of lava lamps, you know, lava lamps, those that have the wax that float up, right? And they had cameras looking at them, and the imagery from it was the seed for randomness. Because the way in which, you know, all those lamps move and stuff
was different for each one.
The source of the randomness. Cool.
Yeah, very cool. Video of a wall of lava lamps. I think Benjamin knows what you're talking about.
Yeah,
I hadn't seen
Google
that
it.
One. Yeah, I just remember when I was learning BASIC back in the day, like straight up BASIC.
Back in my day.
Mr. Ford, my teacher, was like, dude, we're going to put it's not random. He's like, in no way, shape, or form. Like, in fact, you sort of need to take like 7 randoms and then take a random from those randoms, you know, but even those won't be random. It was just like, what the hell? Because you would always assume, oh, it's a computer, 1 to 10. But even humans aren't random. Like, you can ask the same, they've done studies. You ask somebody a random number and you can see them think their choices through. They'll be like, 8. Well, I always choose 8. 6. And you find out the person always chooses 6 because they're asked rarely. And so they always forget that they usually choose 8 and they go to 6. And you can track it. Magicians do it all the time, where they can just look at somebody, talk to them for a little bit and go, this person.
There's a lot of algorithms for RNG, but like I think achieving something that's true randomness, I think is impossible right now. I think that's like the $1 million question for AI gaining sentience, honestly.
It's trying to figure out the behind the scenes
random or like mimic randomness or entropy or being faulty of doing something, which I think it's just impossible to do right now.
Well, we all know we're without fault, so you could certainly ask me.
Exactly. Sure. Especially us in the podcast. Sure. I mean, we never make mistakes.
It's never happened. Not once in the single time of the podcast has something gone wrong.
Yeah.
He's giving me flashbacks of trying to program my own games on my Trash 80. Dude, Trash 80. Thank you for pronouncing it. It was a TRS 80, but the Trash 80 is what it was called. Trash 80. Yeah, go ahead, Johnny.
No, I was just going to point out, you said Mr. Ford. That is a teacher name right there. Yeah. You said Mr. Ford, and I was like, it adds up. It's a teacher.
Yeah, Mr. Ford was our football coach, and he always held grudges, and I was mouthy in school. So it was like every time at football, I was always running laps prior to every single time. Like, and my mom was at the same school, and she'd just be like, yep, Jeremy's running laps again.
And Mr. Harrison?
Mr. Harrison, we had him. Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, we had a Mr. It's almost like your school had to have one Mr. one Mr. Harrison or one Mr. Ford. At least in English schools, obviously. But man, yes, I was fullback. Yeah, those were back in the day, man. It was cool to learn on the Trash 80 and the Apple because I also got to see the change RISC processors come up and all this other, reduced instruction stuff. And you're like, oh shit, it was like magic. Because I remember doing like 10, go to 20, 20, go sub 1000. All this old shit that was very perfect. It was very exact. And then you go to the new stuff and the new libraries. I remember it might have been Abssi, it might have been you, it might have been Reg, trying to explain to me back in the day C, before I was learning C, and being like, the fuck? Like, I would see like John Carmack write a script and I'd be like, that doesn't say it. How does it know to go from 10 to 20? Like, what the fuck is this? None of this makes sense. And because there was no libraries. There wasn't a library. There wasn't anything between you and the metal, which is why the old games were really cool. Because it was like you could alt tab them and go into the code in many games, so you could adjust the game yourself. Yeah, you could see the instructions on some old trash 80 games. I played a puzzle where I could choose to move. This is Wintier. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. I played a puzzle where I could choose to move in any direction I wanted, all the way to the end. And the end had multiple endings, but they could predict exactly where everyone would end the puzzle. Well, wait a minute. Oh, you mean the ending was different each time? I got what he's saying. Yeah, dude, there was a lot of ways for, magicians. If you ever talk to a magician and they tell you their secret, a lot of it's just psychology, just figuring out. Yeah. I still remember going to a carnival and a guy guessed my name, and I still to this day have no clue how. Like, none. But he was just there, and he's like, I can guess your name for $5. And of course, I'm an idiot. I'm the typical, jackass who pays. And I was like, okay. And
maybe he's just a type of detective where he was like, boom, 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 boom.
Well, also your age, because certain people, for example, Wendy was only a name after Peter Pan. It had never been used as a person's name prior.
Gotcha.
So there's some ages where they look and go, most people are named Mike. For example, the 1980s, Mike was big. So there's certain names, Christian names, like mine's Jeremy, so Jeremiah. It was like certain things that you can look at somebody's age and go, there's a good chance this guy's name is not like Salindar or some weird fucking fantasy name.
There is also a known effect with that type of thing, which is the hits count way more than the misses.
Absolutely, yeah.
So for every 20 times he got someone's name wrong, that actually doesn't matter. But the one time he got, one person's name right, that person will remember that.
We used to joke, and I would say, maybe my friend called my name. And he heard it. And he saw it. Because carnies are good at that. Like
Sherlock
that's their
Holmes
job.
do, probably.
Oh, yeah. I mean, exactly. Yeah. But here's the thing about a magician. It isn't magic with a K. It's magic with a C on purpose, because they ain't fucking real. But they do shit that's so mind-blowing because they understand psychology, or they're smart. They listen. And that's the greatest thing. Just listening. And I'm sure he asked questions. Silence works. You see detectives a lot of times will just sit back and be like, because the power of silence causes a lot of people to just start talking. We've done it here, where if there's a bit of silence in a podcast, you're like, well, nobody's here to watch us all go. So you start to talk, and the power of silence is quite useful. Abbreviated Review says, you ever think about biblical names and think about the 2,000 years ago in the Middle East, someone named Mark or John, or a bunch of people, named the same thing? We had like 6 Jeremys in my school. How many Absis were there? 0?
0.
Johnny.
My name is 0.
Oh, go ahead. Because your name is
Muhammad, though. Let me tell you about that name.
Yeah. Were you doing roll call in school and 7 people
Muhammad,
raised?
yeah, you had to call them by their last names, or else it's just no. Yeah.
We also had really gender, I guess at that time, neutral names, where, so Mike was normally a guy, right? But Shannon, Tracy, we were starting to see, different people being called Tracy or Shannon. And so there was that confusion where when you were growing up, it was all, Shannon for me was all the guys I knew. There were 2 or 3 Shannons. And then I got into high school and there was like 2 or 3 Shannons, girls and guys. And you saw that mixture finally happening. Johnny, 50 Johnnies, right? In your school?
Well, I've rarely seen anyone write it the way that I do without the H.
Yeah.
But,
true that.
But yeah, I mean, Johnny, right? John,
2 N's.
Johnny.
Isn't 2 N's like
2 N's?
2 N's is a little bit unique, right? Yeah.
Well, I have 2 friends that are like that. Actually, it's their name is Jonathan without an H.
Oh,
so it's Johnny without an H. Yeah.
Well, my name comes from John, not Jonathan. But I just chose to write it different.
Like your name is just John,
but in Spanish or Portuguese. Juan or João.
Okay.
Oh,
gotcha.
really? Oh, gotcha. Yeah, dude, you know
Yeah.
what? I keep thinking, I mean, obviously you've told me 1,000 times. I keep thinking you grew up in London. And then I forget all about it. But yeah,
no, yeah,
absolutely.
I only moved later for the master course. So
I just
it was
gotta
Spain.
always congratulate you on your fucking grasp of English, man. Because, dude, 5 years ago,
I mean, I don't know, man.
you've done really well.
Certainly has improved. I'll tell you that, because sometimes
improved.
I listen back to like some old stuff and.
Nah, dude, it's so cool to see because language is tough, especially English, where, you know, we have, and Russian, you know, it depends also
Weird
on
rules.
written versus spoken. But yeah, exactly. We have some weird rules. And so, and even inflection is different. We don't have male and female speech like a lot of people do. You know, there's like different things. And so it's so cool. Oh, I can skip this ad. Ha! I skipped the ad. But it's so cool to be around somebody who's learning a new language and see him grasp it. Like, I know you may not think it's quickly, but it is. Your fluency is 10 times more. So you knew the basic words, or you'd struggle for a word. Now you almost never struggle. Even I struggle. Like, we all struggle for any word in our native language too. It happens. So I don't see it. I don't notice it more with you than anybody else. And it's just amazing because I remember when I first met you. And it was difficult to understand sometimes.
It was rough.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's why I'm nervous about learning another language. I know, you know, some sentences in some languages, but it's like,
I think you gotta be obsessive a little bit, because the way it works for me, I'm almost like an AI trying to calibrate other people. So like when you say something and I notice, wait, hold on a sec, he said it differently than
try to figure out the
what
pronunciation.
I do. What's going on there? And I will kind of overthink it. And the same with Abssi or other people, right?
Yeah.
So I think just by doing that, you get better, but you also sometimes go a little crazy.
Abssi, do you have trouble going back away from English? Like if you jump in and you start talking to somebody?
I know English way more than I know Arabic. Like my vocabulary in Arabic is way
more limited.
Like so English has become my first language. I mean, I grew up I don't remember a time where I wasn't speaking English, so technically.
So
but
all your family and stuff,
my
do you
accent,
do English?
No, I talk to them in Arabic.
I was gonna say, I've heard him talk to his family, and it's definitely not usually in English.
Yeah, but like my accent, I guess, is a little bit unique because I grew up with English speakers that weren't like a very, very diverse group of kids. Like in my school, like everyone was from somewhere, whether it's in a Western country like Canada, America, or whether it's like
even
UK
their inflection was different,
Russian, or everybody was different. So it kind of like my accent is like a melting pot of all that. And then I went to Canada for 10 years. My accent was way worse than it is right now, but I'm just I just don't. I'm good with where I am, dude. I like my accent. I like how I talk. So
yeah, I always thought it was your native language, actually.
English, yeah, because it might as well be because like I struggle with Arabic a lot. Like and at work I have to speak in Arabic a lot, and making business deals and stuff like that is kind of a challenge, yeah. Right, because my vocabulary.
Why
did
they charge us 30 million instead of 3 million?
What the fuck is quintessential? What is quintessential in Arabic?
Yeah.
I can't really.
Yeah. I mean, that even happens. Like even in reviews, I'll just. Because it depends on your vocabulary, how much you read. If you read science stuff, you read, and there'll be times where somebody's like, "What the fuck does that word mean?" And to me, we might say it all the time, or I might hear it amongst friends, and then, but it happens with slang too, where I'll hear you guys drop a slang word, and I'll be like, "The fuck does that even mean?" You know, and then find out, you know, it just means something I wasn't expecting. It's always awesome to hear other people sort of grasp whatever language and then sort of track it and be like,
yeah,
oh,
I absolutely love it when you or someone else drops a word I don't know.
And
because it's very
awesome, isn't it?
Because like, you know, some time ago I heard orthogonal for the first time and I thought, wow, that's a cool word. Then I got into it, okay, and then I figured out what it was.
And then
it just becomes a new
word for you. Yeah, exactly.
I had a phase where I was just reading a lot of nonfiction books. And they I don't know, some were pseudo intellectual, but some had used very interesting vocabulary that I never heard before. So I would literally just have my notepad or an app there, and just like any word I didn't recognize, I'd type it. First I'd try to figure it out from context and then like look it up later.
There is nothing better, by the way, than that. I don't care what anybody says. That is why I read. I love reading the same books, but I will also read something new, because there is nothing better than reading a word and being like, and it's in your language, and you're like, dude, I've legitimately never heard anybody say that. So then you look it up and you're like, oh, maybe it means a word you would normally use, but it's another, maybe it means like more aggressive version or a more intense version. You're like, that's awesome, because maybe I'll use it in a review and be like, oh, so people
and then
understand
you use it when you pick up
more.
a girl and then to appear intellectual and shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, oh my God, I'm wet.
Yeah, that is orthogonal to my point.
That's exactly the word I was thinking was orthogonal. It's like, hey, baby, you want to get orthogonal? And she's like, I don't know what that means, but yeah, it's always awesome to see that kind of stuff. Moving on from there, our language diatribe. Let's see. We covered Sony. We covered Nintendo. Liza P. Review schedule.
Did you see the Resident Evil 4 DLC is dropping this month?
Yeah, that's VR. Is that? No, that's the extended.
No,
sorry, go ahead.
And there's the VR, which is coming for free, and the DLC you pay for, which is the Ada Chronicle, not Ada Chronicles, but it's her side of the story. Ada, the very, very, very bored Asian chick.
Yeah, and she wasn't the greatest voiceover.
Skimpy clad lady.
Skimpy.
Do not make a kerfuffle. I think for Resident Evil, I have a hard time returning to them to play DLC. That's just the honest truth.
I loved RE4 so much. I will definitely return for that. Yeah.
It was a fun game.
Enjoyed the game.
This is for the remake. RE4 DLC costs what?
The thing is, like I loved VR in RE7, and I think RE8 kind of makes a little bit sense, but not as much as 7. But with 4, man, the reason I loved that game was the movement and gameplay of playing as Leon. That I don't like playing in VR just makes no sense to me. I mean, it's cool and all, but it doesn't appeal to me at all. Yeah.
I agree. I actually think that game does third-person shooting.
Yeah,
some of the best, right?
Like some of the best I've played. It feels amazing.
Some of
suplex.
Some of the Resident Evil games, I just don't. I mean, if they're VR, that's great, but I don't personally. I don't resonate with them. I would say 7 for whatever reason is my favorite. I think it makes the most sense with VR. I don't know if it's the haunted house or whatever it may be. Where Village, I was in no way, shape, or form interested in that.
It's more of a, I don't know, like, I mean, the shooting, they improved a lot in VR. Like, you actually have to reload manually and actually aim with a thing. But
they did a good job.
I don't know.
They did a good job.
7 was more of like an experience, you know.
Also, with Resident Evil, I mean, when was 4's remake released? Was it in this year?
Well, this year.
February or March.
I don't remember.
I think it was
I thought it was
spring
last year.
at some point.
Spring, yes. March for sure. I think March, yeah.
Were they not done with this, maybe? I don't know. I just think that DLC for Resident Evil should have happened earlier. I don't know. A month, maybe. Would have been nicer if it was a month. But
it's definitely coming in at a rough time, though. I'm not going to have time to play it. Man.
Yeah, for sure.
Speaking of that, I asked some questions of patrons and of
nice. I'd love me some questions.
Twitter.
I love the questions that go like, what games would you like remade in 2023?
Negative.
Those are my favorite. Sorry.
I think he's joking. I could be.
I
could be mistaken, but that sounded like sarcasm to me.
The /S. Sorry, I forgot to say that.
Yeah, you never know, right? Let me look at the questions. So I asked everybody. Ooh, okay. We're going to go through these quick because I also got Patreon or Discord. Nordic says Payday 3 is also coming on the 21st. Which games are you most excited for that coming out this month? I think we talked about it. Oh, this month.
Yeah. You know, dude, okay.
Cyberpunk
this month
is going to be interesting to see the discussion about.
Cyberpunk. I was going to say that even though, so I didn't click with Cyberpunk because I went into it expecting what they told me to expect, which was like an RPG, right? Like a very, very rooted into TTRPG and immersive stuff. But if I go into this, because some of the gameplay I'm seeing looks just fun as hell. If I go into this just expecting to shoot some motherfuckers and, you know, use my powers and stuff, I might enjoy it. So I'm looking forward to kind of just fucking around with that for sure. Yeah.
Anything from you, Johnny, before I move to the next question?
No, not September.
Sonak says, what do you think about Sony's refund policy? Is it possible for them to change it to be on par with Valve?
Fuck.
Why? What's going on? I guess I don't know.
Dude,
I know they're difficult. But I don't know.
Very difficult. Okay. Very difficult. If you launch you can refund pre-orders, no problem. If you launch a game, but you know how Steam has the 2-hour thing window, but after that, there's still some cases. that 2 hour window for PlayStation is zero.
Locked in stone.
It comes at it comes at zero. So once you like launch it, that's the window. You can't refund it unless you have like a special reason for it. I had a reason for refunding fucking Star Wars, other than the fact that I dislike the game in general. It was really hard to play because of the blur and the FPS issues and the tearing and stuff like that. And I told them like it was giving me headaches, but they gave me a whole slew of issues because my account is Canadian. I'm not in Canada. There's no way to change my region. And they're like, well, you're contacting us not from Canada, so we can't even help you with that, which is like so backwards because, dude, it's my account. Like, if you don't let me change my region and you don't want to help me because my region is wrong, what do you expect me to do? I think PlayStation support or Sony support is some of the worst. It's even worse than Nintendo's. Dude, Nintendo, you can change your region whenever you want. It'll take away all the points you have in Nintendo store or whatever, but you can change your region. Like, fuck, man, I hate their support system.
Yeah, I've heard it's pretty bad. I tried to return, I can't remember, one game and it worked, but I think that's it. I think I've only tried one. Oh. Christian R says, with October around the corner, it's about time to wonder about 2024. Are there any games you're excited for? I think we answered that in like Stalker. There's something else coming out in 2024, but I think Stalker's my big one.
Stalker 2 is the next big thing I'm looking forward to, yeah.
Taggart West says, Sid Meier's Pirates. Have you guys played it? What do you think about it? Absolutely loved it. Yeah, it's, I mean, I like Pirates. Even the new one, I know a lot of people didn't like it. Yeah, Pirates is old. It's interesting he asked that. I'd like to know like what popped that into his head, because that is an ancient game. But yeah, it was good. Simcoe says, did you guys play NCAA college football back in the day? I did not. I played NFL. I didn't do college stuff at all.
NFL 2006. I think that was the one I played.
That was the last one. Yeah, I don't do college for the most part. I don't know why. I just like the NFL. And same thing with NBA. I stick to the NBA. I don't do the college versions or anything like that. Sergeant Snugglebutt. I understand most podcast members didn't like Cyberpunk. Has the new gameplay changed and shown in the last few weeks made you guys curious? So Absy said, yeah.
Like I said, I'm just going into it with a different mindset. It seems to me that they're leaning more into just being an action adventure game and leaning more into combat and stuff like that, and just like stories, and just going into it with that. Even though it was very disappointing to me from what I was my expectations in the beginning, depending on what they said, not my like overblown expectations. Going into it with a different mindset would help. I definitely didn't like the writing and dialogue of the original, anyways. That's not something that really speaks to me. Like that way of dialogue, I didn't like at all, and that main story, I didn't like, because the urgency just killed it for me. But I might like it. I mean, dude, spy thrillers are always a really fun time. I like Idris Elba. So who knows?
Yeah. What about you, Johnny? Anything for Cyberpunk?
Yeah, I'm way more positive on it than Absy. I like the story. I like the writing. I just didn't like the RPG systems, but still as a game, I enjoyed it. I played it 2 times over, had a good time. My only thing is I don't want to have to play through it again or repeat stuff. So if I can jump in there, like take whatever character I have and jump into this DLC, I'm game. I'll check it out for sure.
I think you should be able to do that, yeah.
Liam is talking about just seeing Nintendo Direct, started thinking about remasters, remakes we've gotten the last couple of years. One part of me thinks this is great for game preservation. The other part would love to see new creative ideas. Would you like to see other remakes or remasters, or would you rather move on? This is something that I just don't agree with people. I personally feel that there are also not remakes and remasters.
Like, yeah, of course.
There are, and there
Plus,
aren't.
They're not a bad thing. I love remakes. There's a lot of time and effort that
good, and they can be bad. But I don't think
mostly good recently.
True, and I just don't think one replaces the other personally.
No,
there's
a lot of amazing games a lot of people missed out on. The gaming industry has been climbing. There's a lot of new people coming in and a lot of old stories that they want to retell, and that's awesome. Yeah.
Shogun says, why are all games involving movie monsters from the 80s? Is that or he says, pretty sad indictment on movie monsters over the last 30 years. Are there any modern movie monsters that could make it into the pantheon of classic creatures?
What?
So what he's saying is, you see Godzilla, right? You see these older movie horror movie monsters in some of these games, whether it be Left 4 Dead or what have you. We're not seeing a lot of the newer ones. I would personally say it's because the newer ones aren't classics, and it takes a while for something to like catch on. Like Scream stuff, we started to see the ghost mask everywhere. I think that makes sense, but I think I think to me it just takes a while for something to be exciting. Like
what are some new monsters though?
Man, a lot of them are Cthulhu stuff. Like a lot of it's Elder God stuff. We saw the color or the something purple, the cosmic one with Nicolas Cage that was Elder like Cthulhu, I guess you would say, was close. I see a lot of that stuff. The big one I would say is the found footage one, Cloverfield. Monster is you would consider to be newer, 10, 15 years. The Cloverfield Paradox was only 5 years ago.
Smoke from Lost. Man.
Yeah, the black smoke from Lost would be pretty cool.
That fucking thing had amazing sound design.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Those sounds were so iconic.
Oh, dude, that thing was awesome. Well, it's like the Predator, right? The Predator's got his click.
Yeah.
That had that weird. Yeah, so it just to me it was awesome, but I do think that it takes a while, and that's why classic. It'll be. I think Scream's pretty classic now, so that's why you might see the ghost face and things. But and then last one, Flava Mac Honey says, "I have has a small detail ever broken your immersion in a game or made you do a double take? For example, I played the first couple hours of Starfield. I finished the tutorial, got to New Vegas, where there was an NPC with vitiligo, the skin disorder. It left me a bit confused because in a world with AI bipedal robots, FTL drives, and cloning, would they have cured it?"
I mean, maybe, but
that's a very analytical person.
But it's not a big deal because I think there's a lot of people with that feel very self-conscious about it, and maybe seeing that on other people and seeing it accepted and not like as a problem might just be more enjoyable to them and give them a sense of.
But it's very interesting that it would even generate that thought process, because if I'm playing a game, I wouldn't stop to think.
I did
like, oh, why is this person like not fixing their face, like with this technology we have.
I admit it. I thought the same thing.
Yeah.
Do you know why I thought it though? Because in the character creator, you can make one. So when I saw it in the characters in the game, I didn't think, oh, FTL drives skin disorders should be fixed. I thought, oh, that's interesting that the character that I was able to make with blemishes or with different types of skin that are not considered like technically connected to a race or what have you is out in the game world. I was more like, oh, they put that out in the game world. But I can see where he's coming from.
Part of the enhanced service to choose to do that.
Yeah,
like there's an enhanced service that can change completely how you look, right?
Oh, true. Yeah. So in a way, by the way, Rev, that's true. In the game, you can actually adjust that. So technically, those people
you could go
in the game
can cure it if they have
fix
enough
your
money.
face.
Yeah.
Yep, that's true. I hadn't thought about that. That's a good point. It is definitely in there. It takes a while to get to that point. I think it's
you can miss it.
Yeah,
if you just
probably
decide
miss it.
never to go into enhance. Yeah.
Discord questions. Hi all, this is David, new to the Discord. What's the most recent game you've completed to 100%? I'm gonna let my dog out. 100% completed.
Wait, what was the question?
What is the last game you completed to 100%?
Oh, God of War Ragnarok. I think God of War Ragnarok and Ghost of Tsushima are the only two games in recent memory that I've.
You did 100% in Ragnarok?
Yeah. It was very enjoyable. There's a lot. The reason why, and that one is because obviously I was enjoying the game loop. But also there were rewards at the end of like, I love rewards that are an experience. So the rewards at the end of many of those lines were like an awesome boss fight or something like that. So yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. And there's some story stuff too that you get.
Okay.
Shut the fuck up. That's reviews.
And that's a good one for 100% because like the side content was actually really good in it. So you wouldn't feel like, just like a check mark thing.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I mean, one of the optional regions was awesome. It was like, I was like, damn, this is such a cool region. Yeah.
I would say personally also, I don't have any idea if I did 100% because I turn everything off.
Yeah, I don't really track.
So I don't know. I would say beating most of the games I review. But 100% would mean like doing all the achievements, I assume. And
that's what the baseline is.
So there's also, though, for example, Shadow Gambit, I did all the achievements in the game. I have no clue if I did all the achievements on Steam or did I play the Steam version or the console? Steam version.
Yeah, like when people say I
Shadow
100%ed Starfield, they didn't actually 100% it, because there's obviously 1,000 planets, but there's also it doesn't track every single quest. Like there's no 100%ing every single quest in the game. There might be like, okay, the main factions and stuff, but there's a lot of hidden quests and stuff like that that just aren't part of any trophy or achievement system.
Well, I don't think you could 100. Oh, yeah, I guess in Steam you might be able to, but you can't actually 100% that game just because it's random at some point.
Yeah,
it's like,
right.
And
so you might have
devs,
all achievements.
Yeah, even the devs said nobody had come close to 100, just like with Baldur's Gate. Yeah. Like there's different levels of it. Jesus Crust says, ignore if you guys covered it. Everyone's thoughts on Unity. We did discuss that. Old Boy says, which fighting game character's moveset would you take as your own? Lao, Virtual Fighter, for sure. What about you guys?
Yoshimitsu from Tekken.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Oh, very nice. Dude. I always wanted to be Liu Kang and be able to do the flying kicks
on somebody's face. Did Liu Kang also? No, he does Fireball. He doesn't have the hat, right? That's the other guy. Yeah. Dude.
Sorry, I need a minute. I'll be right back.
Oh, go for it. Rick Flair says, which canceled game do you wish had actually been released and why?
Yeah. I can't think of one.
Okay. There was a game that was only shown for a brief amount of time. We're talking a couple screenshots, and I think it was shown behind the scenes to publishers. And it was a horror game, and it was about a guy who gets stuck on a country road with his car broken down, and he calls the tow truck, and the tow truck driver shows up and shoots at him, and it turns into a horror game after that. That was legitimately all that cool. I really saw, and a couple of photos. But I remember for years constantly waiting, because the idea of the quick setup, and they even said you don't know why shit just goes wrong and you have to sort of like battle your way out of it. A little bit like Alan Wake starting, where he crashes the car. And I would love to have seen that. And I don't even, we're talking like 15 years ago.
Prey 2's concept was really, really cool. I don't think the actual game would have been like that, but if it was, that's one thing I would have liked. I love the new Prey, which honestly shouldn't even be called Prey. The devs didn't even want it to be called Prey. It was a separate game. But Prey 2 would have been really cool, yeah.
I do think that Prey fits it, though, because you are Prey. Like, so I don't know.
Dude, it's the word Prey. You can make it fit anything, honestly.
Yeah. Well, true. You can. But I do think the game fit that. But I do absolutely understand why, like, they felt pressured into doing it and were bothered by it, or they say they were. See, that's another thing. I am so now accustomed to even people I talk to in day-to-day life with restructured histories.
Oh,
hear them say something
history because of recency. 100%.
I was just in a conversation 3 or 4 days ago with a group of friends where the person was saying something that not only do I know is incorrect, we have a recording of it because it was during a friend podcast years ago.
Effect.
Yeah. And I was sitting there going, I'm not going to correct them. It's complete. They pretended like they weren't actually in the conversation. It was somebody else. And I was like, I just watched that video. They were in that conversation. But it just over time, and they even say, I don't know if you've heard this, but as a lot of scientists, every time you remember a memory, you slightly adjust it. So therefore, your most cherished memories are the most changed, as in the most adjusted, the most touched up by your fanciful thoughts years later. So I was just like, okay, whatever. But it was an interesting thought process, because sometimes I hear these game companies, or I hear somebody say, this happened at work, and I'm all... Did it? I mean, I'm not saying you should like always question it, but I've been around so...
Dude, I had a friend. He was the dude that every sentence out of his mouth, everyone in the room would be like,
not exactly, remember when? And you're all, no, I remember when this happened, but I don't remember what you're saying. And so when it comes to like that kind of stuff, I'm not saying they're lying, by the way. It just popped up into my head that a lot of times when I hear this years later stuff, I'm like, I wonder how, for example, as my old job, I had to fire people. And sometimes when you would fire somebody, their opinion of what was occurring was so UFO, so outside the realm of anything that you realize, yeah, they truly did probably believe that. You know, it was completely fanciful. It wasn't a part of the real reality that happened, but that person believed it for whatever reason. And or somebody say, I remember when I fought for this at a job, and you're like, you were there, and you're like,
some things, man, that like it gets imprinted or committed to memory that might have never happened. Like the fact that I think 100%, and I believe this 100%, and I'm not even kidding, that Reg didn't like rocks in Metro, but he says he didn't actually say that. It's mind-blowing to me, because in my head he 100% said that, and I remember it clearly.
It's a hallucination.
So sometimes, I don't know, man. Sometimes
well, what it was because I remember the discussion. It was a lot of people talking about things in the game, and he was answering people and talking as well. And it folds up into, you know, you might read the person's reply in the little baby text.
No, in my head it was in a podcast. That's what makes it baffling to
gotcha.
me. Yeah.
Well, I mean, he could also be wrong too. I just don't remember. But I do remember that conversation where years later he's like, "What? Right. I didn't dislike the rocks," and I'm like, "I thought he did." But you never know. And it's happened. It does happen. I mean, it is something that just for sure happens. ACG, why Lao? Why do I? Oh, Lao, the fighting move question. Because I like Lao. Fighter? I like Lao. Yeah, he's awesome. I named my dog Lao from it. He's obviously one of my favorites. Oh yeah, Abbreviated Review says 1313, the Star Wars bounty hunter game that got canceled.
Oh yeah,
that'd be a good. Yeah.
Who was that? Ubisoft or just
no, that was Motive, or wait, was it Motive? Okay. Was it EA? We had Jesse Harlan, right? the composer, on here. I had him on here. Where was he working at that? You know, I don't remember. I don't remember, but it was the one that, like, they were pretty far along too. Jesse
I remember from the gameplay trailer, they were on a ship and the ship was like crashing or moving or something, and you were like kind of shooting people or lightsaber. I completely forgot.
I mean, dude, when you look at the new Ubisoft Star Wars game, there's a lot of 1313 in it. You know.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, man, I'm excited for that one. Yeah.
He says it was LucasArts.
LucasArts, okay.
Yeah. But looking on from there, and like all the different questions, I do want to say we may joke at times about like that we've been asked the questions, you know, multiple times, which we are. But I do want to point out that we try to answer them, you know, multiple times. But at some point, sometimes I'll skip a question, and you know, I get that somebody's new, but they may ask. We joke about like, if you were on a desert island. But it's like,
oh god, yeah.
At some point, you don't really have any different answers, and it's like, okay, we've answered that enough times. I'll try to do it whenever it's a super chat or patrons a lot of times, but that is, just so you guys know, that is why we sometimes skip it. So looking at reviews for Mortal Kombat, this popped up. Looks at Metacritic's 86 for, well, OpenCritic, the better one, is 88.
Yeah.
For that. So 7s, not a couple 9. Some of these guys with their 9s. A couple 9s. 9.5. I will say this, personally, I don't do scored reviews, but some of those seem really high, just even though I like what I'm playing, the invasion stuff that's grindy. If that turns out to be true, somebody must have not been bothered by that, I guess. It's possible. I played a lot of the side content in Mortal Kombat games. They were awesome. I love a lot of that side content.
I love the old school, you know, Deception, Armageddon, just all these wacky mini games or side games that are massive, like open worlds. And remember the one where you grow old and learn moves, and I love that shit. That was what breathed life into my Mortal Kombat for me.
So I had some questions here that I had from other podcasts that we did not answer. They're my questions, as in stuff I wanted to know. When you were a kid, what was your favorite toy?
Like physical toy?
Physical toy, like a G.I. Joe character, Barbie, Tonka
I didn't
truck.
have a doll.
For me, Transformers. I had these. You know, some of them were animals from the animal saga,
like
or whatever.
Dinobots maybe, or what have you.
Yeah, like the fucking gorilla. Which I think Optimus Prime was a gorilla.
You're talking not
Beast
Gen
Wars
1,
or
that's
whatever.
the Beast Wars.
Yeah,
right?
And then I also had like traditional Transformers, but I loved those because they would
two toys in one, right, Johnny? Two toys in one.
Yeah,
you had a car and a robot. It was awesome. And I don't know about you, but there were some Transformers that would turn into 3 things, and that was like you broke reality. You're like, oh shit, we're folding dimensions. It turns into a car, a fern, and a robot. And you're like, fern, not so useful.
Man.
But the robot.
And I don't know if you guys had those, but we had almost like engineering toys where you would like assemble.
Is what we had.
It's not Lego. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, dude. They were
Constructs
awesome.
were awesome.
Constructs
was
legit, man. And when you were a kid, I could never finish it, but I loved having like the metal beams and making
or like Jimmy rigging your own thing out of it.
For sure.
And getting that motor that like spins and shit.
Yes.
Amazing.
Those were amazing. I'm glad you mentioned those. Those things are awesome.
I loved the toys that would come out. So back home, back in the day, we'd get like these animes that would be ported over or dubbed over, and with those animes, new toys would come out with them that are more like utilitarian, like you'd have utility out of. For example, there was the yo-yo in that yo-yo anime, and there's so many different yo-yos, and they all have like these special moves and different ways of playing these yo-yos. We'd get super into that. Beyblade would come out, and you'd get all these different Beyblades and like battle each other and stuff.
That shit's awesome.
And there was also the one with the cars where you like go like this, and the car would move and race each other in the track. Like those are the toys I really enjoyed. Yeah.
For me also, we had this massive yellow. They're the dump trucks you see at mines, the massive ones where the tire's like 20 feet tall. And this thing was pretty big scale. And so you could ride it. And we had a driveway. And we would get on that thing and drive it. And we had so many fucked up hands, and because it would dump us, because the dump truck part worked. So you'd be riding it and you'd lean too far back, and then your fingers would get caught under the metal. It didn't matter. We'd be bandaged up, and my brother'd be like, I'll push you. And we'd try to go faster and faster. And then we skipped a summer. The next summer, we were too big and we didn't know. We got on it, and the fucking both axles shattered under us. We got it, and we're like, and we broke the toy. And it was that devastating moment where your fucking innocence was ruined. I was like, we broke the best toy ever. It was disastrous.
While breaking stuff, I had a huge infatuation with tinkering and seeing stuff under a microscope. I also really loved telescopes, but I would get these microscopes, or the ones that would display stuff on a screen, or the ones you'd look in with your eye, and basically like break down a calculator or something, taking like the circuit board, placing it there and looking into it. Like I loved doing that stuff. I loved like pretending like I was doing something by breaking something and just like kind of tinkering with it.
Did you guys ever fuck around with chemicals? Because my dad had a shop.
Yes.
And I would mix shit that I bet you fucked up my brain, man. I would be in there mixing stuff and be like, oh, it's bubbling. And I have no clue what I was mixing.
Oh, no, I do it in school, like under control.
Oh, no, not me, man. I would be I'd be like oil, hydrogen peroxide, gasoline, and styrofoam. And then we mixed up, try to light it on fire. And I remember, you making poor man's napalm, which was, you could use soap and styrofoam, light it on fire, and that it would not go out even underwater. We would do some crazy shit. My dad always had like, I don't know what they were. Even now, I don't know what they were, but they were little jars, and you just mix stuff and be like, oh. He also trapped
Dude, I'm so
animals,
innocent.
So a lot of it was whack.
When you started saying that, I thought you were going to say, that thing you can do, you mix like a couple things, and it produces lots of bubbles, like lots of
no, this was probably
foam or
meth.
whatever. Yeah, you're like, dude, I'm like, make some napalm.
No, broke back is not, you're talking about the other way. I thought you said broke back. I'm like, that's a different move. That is not what you're thinking.
Yeah, different angle.
Oh, yeah, man. We would, my dad also trapped. And so you dip traps in wax to stop animals from being able to smell human on it. And so we would heat that up when my dad wasn't around. By the way, ruin it, because we would dump our hands in. It'd be hot, but you'd make a wax figurine of your hand. And we would just dip our hands in this boiling wax and then make figurines. And I remember my dad couldn't trap for like a full year. And it was because we were fucking up all the wax. We were in there at the night when my dad would be at work. We'd be like, you'd make a monster hand and shit. What else do I have? I have favorite school memory.
Oh, geez. Making no, I won't.
Yeah, nothing. There. We don't need to go risque.
Yeah.
Because I have a couple of risque ones.
But it's so funny though. It's so funny.
I'll tell you one. We I don't know about you guys, but we would do a lot of. We were physical, so we do a lot of stupid stuff. And I remember we had bleachers that came out, and we always heard the story that a person would get crushed in the bleachers. So we tested it to see if it could crush you by putting one of our friends in, and then three of the football players pushed the human testing. The way, Human testing, really stupid. I mean, we were only like, well, we were probably older than I want to admit, but didn't crush him, but it did hurt him. And afterwards, we were like, you know, where you have that moment. Have you ever had that moment where you do something really stupid and you're like, I lived through that. I need to learn. Mm-hmm. That's what we did. When we got done, we were like, all right, somebody didn't die. We need to make sure that never happens again. Like, don't even test it. But yeah, we would test that. And it was a fun memory because all of us lived, obviously. But it was like this moment where everybody learned afterwards. They're like, that could crush you, man. That is interesting. Like, that could, like,
dude, you've had an intense.
Oh, dude, my school was always doing stupid stuff, like seeing how far you could jump by putting a single mat under your legs. I don't know how anybody didn't break their legs, but you'd be like jumping off of shit. Like, that was so fun back in, you know, I think we're all kids. You have bones that are a little more flexible, I guess.
Yeah, you don't fall. You just kind of roll.
Yeah.
As a kid.
Oh, yeah, there was some crazy stuff where later when you look at it.
monkey bars and just get up.
Yeah, dude, we had people push their teeth in. Like on monkey bars, they'd flip on accident, catch or break an arm, and then like 6 weeks later, everybody thought it was cool because they had a cast, and people are like trying to hurt themselves.
Everyone was like, "Oh, I want to."
Like, oh, you got a cast, man. That's you're impervious.
We did skateboarding when I was a kid, and the same. Like, you would fall, you just roll it off.
Yeah. You'd be like, my arm's bent wrong.
We used to play this game where you'd sit with like a person and you would have to guess a letter in the alphabet. So you're thinking of a letter in the alphabet, and to your friend you're doing this harder and harder the more they guess wrong until they guess the letter right. So by the end they'd have a huge scar on their hand.
That is so interesting. We had the same
and everybody got one, so everybody wanted a scar.
Pencil erasers, the same game, but they would use pencil erasers, and they'd be like, it was almost like cooler and cooler would be harder and harder on your hand. We didn't try to hurt any, like, I don't think we had any scars, but it was definitely a thing. And then what is the first show as a kid to wow you? It can't be a movie. Like the first show as a kid.
Stargate SG-1.
SG-1. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. What about you, Johnny?
It was actually, can it be a cartoon or no?
It can be a cartoon. That's fair.
It was Dragon Ball Z.
Oh, really?
That thing. Yeah. It was so big in like where I lived that it transcended, you know, anime or whatever. It was like a way of life. Everybody in my school and region knew the power levels of every character in the different arcs. Yeah. And we would just nerd out about that with, you know,
that's basically what World of Warcraft was to us, where it was like it transcends like games, where it was just like
it went beyond the niche itself.
Right. And that's so awesome when you hear somebody talk about something that is like outside of where you would expect the conversation to occur. And there's something cool when you get another group in. Lost, it was cool because I had my family who we didn't share a lot of likes or whatever. And then, you know, you'd hear my dad talk about it and you'd be like, whoa, wait, what? You know, but for me, it would probably be X-Files, because I do remember like calling up friends and being like, dude, did you see this last episode? This weird shit happened. And and it's before a lot of people's time for X-Files, because that was still 90s, I think. I can't remember when that first came out. And it's
funny because when I went back to watch the X-Files, that was years after the fact. So for me, it was almost like watching a B movie where it was like a comedic
and the technology probably wasn't there where they're going to people's houses versus using a computer.
Duchovny, which at that point he had done Californication, and I saw him
way late.
In different eyes.
Later. Yeah.
Way later. So it was funny to go back to that. But I'm guessing for you, it was a serious
because it dealt with the
show.
time. Like, I remember like talking to my friend Randy. He's like, the one who passed away. But we'd be like, dude, do you think that's like? Are the showrunners like telling us a real story? You know, and it was like right around. There were a couple bombings and stuff, and they would cover those. But I still remember him mispronouncing the intranet, or I think he called maybe he called it intranet. But I remember just being like, wow. Or their computer readouts were the DOS readout that you'd see on old cash registers. And now when you go back and see it, you're like, holy shit. I just loved it that the FBI went to people's houses versus searching online. They had to go somewhere, get in a rental car. And there was the journey. So to me, it was a big deal because it was like two friends, even though they weren't friends. They were they were like friend partners, but I remember thinking that would be such an amazing job to like have a friend you really liked and go solve crimes, like
road trips.
Scooby-Doo.
It's kind of like Supernatural or something.
It very much. Oh, dude, Supernatural is the X-Files of like, just like Fringe is the X-Files of now.
Great.
Even Fringe is a little dated. I was watching Fringe recently, and there a couple things technology-wise they did. I'm like, ooh.
Sure.
Or when they cover AI and it's like, hello, Bob, I will help. And I'm like, dude, have you heard ChatGPT? Doesn't talk like that.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
True. Yeah.
A lot of people are saying, Bart The Simpsons. Yeah, The Simpsons was. There was nothing. Like
you
The
mentioned
Simpsons.
Lost. Lost was a big cultural event where I lived in Spain. That was Spain at the time.
Same here, yeah.
All of us in my my group of friends where I lived in university, all the people we hung out together, we would watch every week. I think it was 6-7 of us just, in a room. We would get in one person's room and watch just religiously every week. And I think we watched several seasons like that until the very end. And I still remember to this day, the last episode of Lost. When that came out, we waited until midnight or whatever to
watch it.
Watch it, right? And our level of hype was so, it was impossible to meet the expectation.
Right, yeah, I get it.
So whatever they showed would have disappointed us, but we were just utterly disappointed with it. We didn't like the conclusions or the answers. It was just one of those huge moments.
For us, it was Supernatural, where I would invite everybody over and we would watch multiple Supernaturals. But it is interesting to me that also sports was big. I still remember going to my mom and dad's house and she was talking about Mike Tyson and being blown away. My mother was talking about a boxer. And that it was a cool moment where he was already having some problems. And I think we even got into an argument where I was like, listen, man, the guy didn't have the best life. Like, this was before the accusations of rape. This was like, rough childhood, getting rough with people, beating people up in the street. And I remember having a conversation with my mom and being like, that's pretty insane that my mom knows a boxer. Like, it was just out of the ordinary my mom would ever know. I was growing up on HBO Sports, by the way, which would you'd hack it. It wasn't the legitimate version, and it would be all scraggly, and they'd be like, Mike Tyson, he'd come out in his white towel, and I'd be like, how long is this fight gonna last? Like 16 seconds, because he was blowing people up. It was ridiculous.
Damn.
And like at that, it was in the height of like somebody would come in, it was like a chainsaw, and then they would not wake up, and he would walk out. He'd be like, and then he'd talk, and that was the biggest thing. The first time Mike Tyson spoke, I remember going, what now? Because he was like, I'm the best fighter I ever lived. And I'm like, holy
it's
shit,
so funny.
that is not what you expect, right? Yeah, that was a good time, man.
Yeah.
I think and Lost was great. I remember going to work and hearing people talk about it, and talk about it still. It's obviously made a change in me.
The three
Water
main
cooler.
ones we would watch, like the three main ones that I don't remember the timeline exactly, but it seemed like we all started watching them together. Was Lost, Heroes, and Prison Break.
Yeah,
Like, those were,
Heroes
like,
was huge.
Those
Heroes
TV
was
shows
huge.
that you can't wait for the next episode. Like,
I
wanna see
agree.
what happens
And
with
Prison
that.
Break too, by the way.
Yeah, Prison Break,
that was awesome.
I missed and still haven't seen, but I would absolutely put that in the level of Lost, because I remember everybody was like, oh my God, did you see this last episode? We have a super chat, $5 from Hush Out Gooey says, if you could change your mode of transportation with anything from any game, what would it be? The Normandy for me, from Mass Effect. I want a FTL drive, man. I want to go to other planets.
I've always I dreamt of kind of becoming like a crazy scientist and making this, because I've always like loved the idea of it, and it's Doc Ock's thing.
Yeah.
Like, just like being able to control it with my brain and shit, and just like move with these things. And I in my head, like, once I was sleeping over at a cousin's house, and I was just like in bed, kind of with the eyes wide open, just thinking about how I'm gonna invent the thing and use it. And that's back in the day where I thought anything was possible. Like, everything was
Absolutely.
possible.
I tried to make a speeder bike from Return of the Jedi thousands of times with a bicycle. And I remember asking my parents for Christmas, I was like, I've been a perfect kid. I've done nothing wrong. Can I get a jetpack? And my mom and dad were like,
yeah.
what?
Or
Like,
VR, man. We'd
or-
go to Toys R Us
yes.
and I'd be like, I want to be in the game.
Yeah.
And then they'd be like, I'd put it on and be super disappointed.
super
and be like,
disappointed.
Where is it? Where is the good VR? I know
what
it's
about
out
you?
there.
What about you,
like
Johnny?
nature.
Is there any transportation?
I would want something like the Iron Man suit.
Oh, dude, that would be wicked.
Yes.
That's the thing. That's why I hate the Neil. I love Neil deGrasse Tyson's. You know, he can be a little, but I don't like sometimes when they ruin it with science. I'm like, I don't need to hear. I don't need to hear that
it's not.
Yes, it's
Stop.
a super. Yeah, and he's like, well, this is an unknown metal, blah blah blah. And I'm like, listen, quantum. The one nice thing about quantum physics, for instance, is that it's showing that weird shit can happen. So my brain is always like, what if? Like the Grinder with Rob Lowe, where he ends every conversation, but what if it wasn't? You know, and you're like, what if The Grinder is hilarious. That guy ignores all reality. I'm watching it right now again. And every conversation, but what if it was possible? And you're like, there's no you can't even argue that. It's not possible. But what if it was? And I loved when I was a kid, before science, when there was the mystery, and you're just like, dude, what the childhood belief in creating stuff was, it's gone now. Because the internet will tell you this is impossible, and you're like, you know. But when you're a kid, you're like, dude, I bet you, like you take it apart.
The whole world is up to your imagination.
It's your oyster,
basically.
man. That's the thing. The world is my oyster. It's like there's a pearl there, and now they're like, no, pearls are just minerals, and you're like, fuck
it's
you.
Like the scope of the world became way smaller now that we know everything, right?
Yep. Yeah. And I love the idea of science, like of Elon Musk's of the world, you know, creating, you know, ignoring all the, you know, creating space. I love the idea because somebody's there is like, but what if it could? And I'm like, that's awesome. Because, dude, when you lose the, or even fantasy or what have you, when there's that day where you have to know that it may not be possible, and you still have to ignore that, because if you don't, you're just going to be a cynic for the rest of your life. Like if you have to keep a little magic in your life.
The world went from Elden Ring to an Ubisoft game of like showing you everything on the map for you.
On a with a guide.
With icons everywhere.
The mystery is gone, dude.
It's crazy. Where before I would drive and like just know where stuff is, and now it's like I rely so much on Google Maps.
Dude.
It's insane. I rely on mini maps, man. I'm just looking at a mini map.
So let me describe to you how it helped me. I don't like being lost, and I'm a map reader. So it's like I would track it on a map, and then
I loved reading maps, like going to London and getting a massive one.
But as time went on, I did it less and less. I explored less and less. Then my Genesis had a navigation system, and it was amazing because I would push a button and pick a random place in my town and just drive there, because I didn't worry about going on a one-way street the wrong way or getting, you know, because I am conscious that people who aren't paying attention could wreck. So it's like, I didn't want to be that person. But when I got a navigation system, in a weird way, it caused me to like go,
explore more.
Yeah. And there were times where I'd pick a place like 20 miles out of town. And when I was younger, we would do that as friends. You'd be like, you want to go for a drive? Because to me, driving is one of the most enjoyable things in the universe. And even Cadiz joked on a podcast, sometimes I'd turn the same song or a couple songs on repeat, and you'd be like, oh my God, we've heard this song before. But I would just I would be daydreaming while we were driving. I wouldn't even talk. I'd just be like listening to some Motley Crue song, and he'd be like, seriously, let's listen to something else. And I'm like, no, dude, I'm in my head. Like, I'm imagining speeder bikes or, you know, like all the, I think he doesn't fantasize. I still fantasize like a kid in some ways.
Do you remember back in the day where, like anytime any kid had a birthday party, they'd have to hand out maps to everybody.
Yeah.
To like go to their house and stuff. And it's like, you go over
or
here.
Or
like
a
garage
sale.
No,
the map to get to their house. If your city was big, we would have
no Google Maps or whatever.
And a lot of times the kids the night before with their moms would make like 10 maps, and they draw it, you know, crayon or ink, and they'd be like, here's a star, here's where we are, here's the street. And then all the kids at school would get a map. And you'd be like, okay, and then you give it to your parents to drive you.
Just, I remember doing that with my mom and just drawing those maps. And,
I don't have a car right now, Lombardo. Well, we do, but my wife drives it. But I'm looking. I've been looking for 8 months, so I'm sure I'll get one. Or somebody will create a speeder bike. I got to admit, Saudi Arabia has the police officers using the air motorbikes, or are planning on building those out in the next couple of years, and I see them and I'm like,
they're so extra here.
Oh bro, I want that. Exactly. They are a little, they're like, why can't we just use faster cars? It's like, nah, we need an air bike. And I'm like, you do need an air bike.
literally like hover bikes?
Yeah, you can see them. They fly. They work now, but they're basically a motorbike with 4 huge rotors, and they fly around. And they're trying to figure out the battery power. And dude, sweet. They're sweet. Yeah. Well, I mean, look at the guy using the jetpack. You see him in all the videos on YouTube where he's flying around. When I was a kid, the jetpacks lasted 15 seconds. Now, these guys are flying around for like 30 minutes, and battery pack power will just get more and more. I cannot wait.
And you also had like a giant fucking pipe connected to your thing, right?
Yeah, now it's all batteries and stuff like that. And I'm telling you right now, I will be in the newspapers or the websites. I shouldn't say newspaper. They exist, but I will be in a website for smashing into a building, I'm sure. But when they ever sell those, I will be buying one, or I'll lease one, or I want to be able.
It's a lifelong dream.
Oh, dude, it's to fly. Fuck, I wanted to fly when I was a kid. I would have dreams for weeks of, and that moment, I don't know if you guys had it, but when you have a dream in your stomach does the roller and you wake up and you're like, can I please sleep again? I just want to fly again. Oh, man. Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. So great.
Yeah.
It's so weird how so many of us have the
same
flying thing.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I used to
about flying.
Yeah. Yeah,
I used to specifically practice lucid dreaming so that I can fly in my dreams.
Yeah, I would get books at the library and look up lucid dreaming and be like, but I'm pretty good at it, especially if it's the later hours of the morning where I can usually, you're daydreaming, but you're asleep, so you can sort of control it. Or there'd be time where you were dating somebody in a dream and you wake up and be like, am I dating that person? So I think I've told this story, but my friend JD went to school and for 3 days thought he was dating somebody, because the dream was so realistic. And we were all very confused because he wasn't outgoing, but he was outgoing with her. And I remember Roger, my friend, and I were like, is he finally, like, because we were young and this was like his first well, it wasn't a real girlfriend, but he thought it was real. And he told us weeks later, he's like, oh my God, like, good thing I didn't, try to kiss her or whatever. But, but he really legitimately, moments, and he was such a wholesome. He was the most wholesome of guys, and so he just he thought he was dating her. I've had a couple dreams where I've woke up, or a bad dream, where you wake up and you're like, I've had a couple bad ones.
My method to lucid dreaming was, ironically, using the totem method from Inception, which was, for me, it was every day. Like, I trained myself as a habit to just look at my watch and be like, is this a dream?
Yeah, because can you read the watch? Is that what you were doing?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, so I was like, oh, is this a dream? And just look at my watch. And I just have it be a habit. So in the dream world, when I did that, my watch would, like, the gears would fly out and do some weird shit. And I'd be like, okay, this is definitely a dream. Gotcha. So then I would realize, and I'd get to fly around a little bit and then wake up, because I never understood how to stay in the dream for a long time after realizing it's a dream.
Hush Al Ghul, $2 super chat. Dating, fake it till you make it. Yeah, I mean, he probably JD, by the way, was a handsome guy who was in shape. He just was socially not. He was the D&D talker in the wrong group. So he'd be like, hey guys, I'm gonna play D&D tonight in the wrong group of people. He was that guy. Yeah. But he probably could have dated her. ACG, do you think when we have flying cars, we'll be required to have a pilot license? Yeah. I think in cities, it's going to be, even drones here. I don't know if you guys have it, but you have a ton of rules for drones even. Like, they can't go, which, by the way, makes sense. I don't want somebody flying a drone over the top of my house. But yeah, no, dreams, when you have that dream that you can control, there's something about it that, like, captures the little kid in you. I love it, man. Well,
I turned nightmares around as well. Like, I'd make fun of them, and then they'd become funny, like, dreams.
Yeah. What was the best dream you guys ever had? That isn't absolutely unacceptable to talk about. Have you guys ever had?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Dude, okay, wait. As a side note, have you ever dreamt that you were gay?
That I was gay?
Yeah.
No, but I have had dreams where I was, like, involved with a man or whatever, and I couldn't figure out why we were, but not the act.
It's so weird.
Definitely like that. Yeah, for sure.
It's so weird because in the dream you'd have this, like, complete. It's like, it's so hard to explain, because in the dream you'd have attraction for something and then wake up and then be like, what the fuck? Like, that is
not me.
Yeah, it would never seep into real life. But, like, the dream made me feel like I'm someone completely different, which was like, holy shit, that was insane. Yeah,
it's a hidden side to you.
Well, I think that also when you have the best thing about, like, dreams like that is that in a weird way, you do you experience another life, even if it's you're dating some, what have you. And I have definitely used dreams to give me ideas for stuff where I'll have a dream and be like, I've never thought of trying this or whatever. But then when you have the dream of it, maybe use it in business, maybe use it in your relationship, maybe even in your dream, you did something nice for somebody or mean, but there's definitely times, and I will wake up and try to remember the dream for sure. If I ever have any dream,
I used to write them down.
I'll write them down, or I'll say them out loud, and I'll be like, "Oh, that was weird." I'll talk to myself a little bit to remember it, because sometimes you'll have that amazing dream, and you'll wake up and be like, "I know that dream was wicked, but I don't remember what it was."
I hate that feeling where it's evaporating.
You mean like where you can feel it going away, Johnny? Like you can almost feel the
you
memory
can sense it
retreating.
slipping away. Like, oh, I don't remember anymore. Like,
yeah. Johnny, when you dream, do you ever dream in your original language, or do you dream in English?
Yeah, definitely. Fun fact, actually, I still count subconsciously in my original language.
Oh, really? Oh, interesting. Interesting.
So, well, actually, it's not my original. So my original language is Portuguese. That's my native tongue.
Right.
Spanish was what I learned after. So I moved to Spain later. And then I learned English.
Gotcha.
Right? So I actually count in Spanish.
In your inner brain.
So let's say I'm dealing cards and I'm like counting in my head, 1, 2, 3. I will actually, even if I'm with an English speaking group, in my head, I'll be like, 1, 2, 3.
Right. That's
and I don't know why. It just, even if I'm like working out, right? I'm working out and I'm counting the reps in my head in fucking Spanish.
So when you're counting cards, do you say it out loud when you're doing poker?
No, it'll just be in my head. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I would also say for me, the coolest, so I was playing, we used to play all kinds of D&D, and the one we played for the longest period of time was Werewolf, which was, you were werewolves. And I had a dream that was controllable, where I was a werewolf and I was killing bad guys in it, and I was able to control it, and it was probably one of the best dreams ever. And
how do you feel as a wolf?
So I was Krynos, which is the mix, different. Which is the human/wolf.
So you were still kind of human.
Yeah. And I was able to run at full speed along walls, like the movie Underworld and all that. But here's what was interesting. In the dream, of Wolf and Man from Metallica was playing, and I woke up and that is what was playing, because I always listen to music. And it was Wolf and Man, and I woke up and that was playing. I was like, I am dreaming. This is amazing. And it was the only dream I've ever been able to go to sleep. And I would be like, oh my God, calm down. And I went to sleep and woke back up in the dream and was able to continue it.
Sometimes you wake up and then go back to sleep and continue the dream?
Yeah, if you can, but I have to calm myself down. If I like the dream, I'll be like, all right, just breathe.
Have you guys had the feeling that you've had this dream that you're experiencing right now?
Deja vu in the dream. Dream deja vu.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Like the strong feeling that like this is like part 2 of that dream.
Yes. It's a sequel. Like I've definitely had that dream before.
Yeah, I never even thought about it, but I absolutely have had a sequel. It's not usually the same, different night. It's usually the same night, but then like a year later, especially if I'm reading, because I love to like dive in. If I'm reading the same fiction or whatever, there'll be times where I'll be like, I'm the same character, or this is the same bad guy.
I honestly believe like the dream implanted memories in me rather than I actually had a previous and a sequel.
Oh, you think that at some point you've had a memory
because
that
I can't recollect. Oh, it was that day when I had that dream, unless I kept a dream journal. But like I think it was just like deja vu, just implanted memory.
Yeah, I think it's for me mostly that it's just that feeling. The brain glitch.
Do you guys ever listen to music when you go to sleep and then hear it in your song? I've had times where the entire school was dancing to a Glee song in my dream.
Yeah.
And it was playing.
Recently, quite a few times I'd like either take a nap or in the morning I'm sleeping where either someone is talking or there's music playing or there's like a TV going where it would have an effect on my dream. Where I like dream about something and then wake up and be like, oh, that's how it got into my head.
Yep. And the worst is horror movies, man. I had a fear of sharks, and Jaws came out, and I had a dream. My brother and I were on the boat, flipped over, and it was circling, and the dream would not stop. and it was all.
Wow.
And I've been hurt in my dreams, and weirdly enough, pain never comes through, but numbness does. So, for example, if I got a leg chopped off or eaten in a dream, I'll have this odd numb feeling in my leg.
Yeah.
And I remember with my brother and I, he lost an arm, and I pulled him up, and it got my foot. And I remember in the dream going, "This isn't fake," because I was feeling this numbness, and it could have just been sleep numbness. It could have been like cut off circulation, but it was that moment where you're like, "This might not be fake. This might be real."
Fuck,
what
was I gonna say? Oh shit!
I was talking about Jaws, numbness, feeling pain.
Jaws. Wait, like sharks. Oh yeah. You know what? Okay, this is funny. You know what haunted me a lot in my nightmares? Huh. You know the TV girl from The Ring that would come out of the TV?
Yeah.
Dude, but it wasn't. You know how I got that? I got that from Scary Movie 4.
Oh yeah, the comedy, not the
the comedy. That's what came in. Yeah, that's what. What haunted me.
That's that's the thing is like I've had my dad has night terrors, and they it's connected to a bunch of stuff. I have restless leg. I don't really have night terrors, but I've never had sleep paralysis. But one of the heart medication pills that they can give you for whatever reason, that's like one of the and everybody I talk to who's ever had it, truly had it, and I'm like, well, I would know, it wasn't real. But everybody I talk to, some very scientific people are like, no, you don't understand. It's real. Yeah. And it's haunting, like true, absolute sleep paralysis. I've never had it.
Oh, do you remember sound from your dream? Like for some reason, the concept of sound completely gets eliminated after I wake up. Like,
I would say it's like cotton in my ear. Like I have if it's not music, I don't remember the sounds a lot of times. Yeah, it's usually, and I dream in color a lot, but sometimes I will have a black and white dream where it's completely. Really? Yeah, it's completely
because
black
you had
and white.
Like a portion of your childhood and watching black and white stuff.
No, because I've talked to people who never grew up with black and white anything. But sometimes, and it's probably just in your sleep, the chemical doesn't get to the vision center or whatever, and so color doesn't. But I've definitely had, and I've had static dreams where everything looks like the Matrix, but it's black and white dots. I've had a couple of those, which are actually a little haunting when you're like they're a little ghostly. There's something about that.
I would say like 90% of my dreams do not have a clear sense of plot or direction.
Oh yeah,
there'd be one theme. But like the events would be so sporadic and weird. You know what I mean?
John, do you have to go? I don't want to hold you.
I have to go in a bit.
Okay.
But doesn't it feel like in the moment it makes sense? It's like, oh yeah, this is.
Yeah, I don't question it in the dream.
Yeah, but then when you wake up and you're going over it, it's like, wait, what?
Like,
Yeah. No, I absolutely get that.
You're so bought into the fiction, you know?
Yeah. And I do know some people I've talked to who've had dreams where, like I said, where JD thought he was dating something, where it just probably, like Absy said, it might have actually created a memory where, later they might be like, remember when we talked about this? And maybe I'm like, we never did. But then how do I know? They just didn't have a dream. I do remember going to work and so if you see this with relationships a lot of times where you see it in romantic comedies where people butt heads and then date, right? They like there's friction and then they date. And a lot of people like that, whatever. Nobody's going to watch this, but I was working at one job and me and a person butted heads constantly all the time. And I go to work the next day and she is acting really weird, like uncomfortably weird. She won't, like there's something going on, like almost like I offended her but she was acting very kind. It was odd. About 2 weeks later, she told me, she was like, I had a dream that we were banging at work in every room. And she was so shocked by it because we did not get along. We got along after that, which is what I was going to bring up, was that weirdly enough, the dream and us joking about it afterwards, we actually, I don't know if maybe I was like, well, I get it that, maybe we are button heads too much because she knew we were button heads and it was just constant. And she was very elegant and I'm like the logger. Yeah. And it just was not working out at our job. Well, and it was one of those moments where it helped us.
Sometimes I just have a friend, like a girl who's just a friend, and I wouldn't have a crush on her or anything, and then I'd have a dream about her.
Sex dream or whatever.
She'd be like something, and then or cutesy dream, and I'd be like, holy shit, I want to marry this person right now. Like I love her.
You know what I will never do though, as the man in all my life, if I've ever had that type of dream, I would never tell somebody. She
I
told me,
only
and that's
significant
okay.
others.
But I would not tell a girl at work I had a dream. I don't know where
Yeah.
we work. The women
Well,
were
it's a
very
bit-
powerful or whatever, so they would talk about things. But I would never have been like, last night I had a dream. It would never happen.
because
It
yeah.
just sounds weird coming from a guy. Like she was saying, I was like, okay, that's funny. But me saying it would have been not cool. I don't know. That's
agree.
another thing I don't tell a lot of people about my dreams, not because I'm worried or anything. I just they're sort of mine. I don't know how to describe it, but like, and sometimes you're not infantile in your dream, but there's been dreams where you're defenseless. For example, I swear to God, I work out more because of this. I've had dreams where I'm punching somebody and it won't hurt them.
But it won't work, man.
It won't work,
It's
or
so
you're like,
frustrating. It's like, I'm
why is
punching
this
so
not
hard,
hitting him?
but it's going so slow motion.
Dude, it's the worst feeling.
It's like walking in an endless hallway.
Yes, or swimming and trying to move quick.
Oh my God.
And I would go to the gym, or I would go, and Cadiz would come over to work out, and he'd be like, dude, you're cooking it for like 3 hours. And I'll be like, and it was in my dream going, you're not fast enough.
But I had that a lot when I was practicing martial arts, and specifically.
I think it's a thing of that worry of being
I'm finding so disturbing, like how similar some of these
dreams are.
Frameworks.
That's something in a lot of
there's something embedded in us, such
the
that
DMT,
we have
it's
these
the
common
molecule.
Like common thought processes, Johnny.
We're tapping into the elves and
the DMT, the DMT elves. But I do think that overall, most humans who aren't psychopaths or what have you will probably all have. There's a feeling, even in the Tyson talked about it later, where he was worried during fights. Some people aren't. I've talked to people myself. I don't get too worried during fights, but some people get really nervous. Some people don't at all. But Mike Tyson talked that he was actually fearful and he was using overconfidence. The thing is most people are about something. For example, talking in front of groups, people will have nightmares about it, because they feel inadequate. Even the best talkers will have nightmares about like being in front of a group. You hear about being naked. You have a dream about being naked. I've had dreams about being naked at school, and you don't realize it.
You forgot your pants? Like, why the fuck would I ever forget my pants? It's the worst
dream.
Man.
I've had that dream so many times where I'm like, how
would I
have ever forgot my pants? I've never had a dream where I peed. Never had a dream where I peed, but I've absolutely had a dream where I've forgot my pants and underwear. It's never like you're never in your boxers. You're always hanging out. And what's weird
sometimes
is
my shoes, like I just forgot to wear
forgot your shoes and you're barefoot. You ever had those, Johnny? Or like where I've had dreams where all my clothes were inside out or reverse, and I'll be like, I can't pee, and I realize my zipper's in the back, and I'm like, the fuck?
I never had those.
See, Johnny, we do have different experiences.
Okay, we have some differences.
What's your weirdest dreams? And then we'll wrap it up. Weirdest dream. It can be like aliens.
I can't even describe them. I can't even.
The ones that really freak me the hell out are actually music ones, because some of like the best songs that I've created have been because I woke up with a melody in my head, and I just recorded it. I would just like whistle it into the phone or whatever. And then I would take that and, play it on the guitar or something. And that turned out to be some of like the best shit that
I love that feeling.
That's awesome.
When you wake up and you're like, oh shit. And you have to
But I don't know what's going on there. Like, what am I tapping into? Did I just like
subconscious
dream that? Like, I don't know where it comes from. It kind of feels like you're fishing from a pool.
Yeah,
and you fish that.
I read a book. I read a book called Pragmatic Thinking once. It was specifically for coders, but like it applied to everybody. Where a method to utilizing a lot of your subconscious would be to set an alarm for like 4 or 5 a.m. and while you're like half sleepy, just write words. Just keep writing stuff, and then stuff from your subconscious, from the memory that you stored, because you store every memory, but you can't index them all, but they're all there somewhere, so they just get imprinted onto like a paper or like come out when you're like not that conscious.
I think it was the poem. I think it's Kubla Khan. I could be wrong, but I think it's Kubla Khan, where the guy wrote an amazing poem and was interrupted by a door salesman and couldn't finish the poem. And it's one of the greatest poems, and I think it's Kubla Khan. But anyway, he talks about it. He couldn't get the salesman to leave, and he believed there might have been, like he was so this guy wouldn't leave, and he was so confused by it that there was discussion. Like, was it like some entity saying you can't finish?
We can't let you
stage.
finish this.
Yeah, and he was like, he never let him in before, but he let him in for whatever reason. And by the time he left, he could never return back to the poem.
Wow.
And what's always what I was gonna say, the weirdest dream I ever had, and it haunts me. I don't like gills. And I grew up in a fish plant, but I don't like fish gills creep me out, because to me it's an opening to the bot. Like a mouth
like
doesn't bother me, but gills are like a passive opening.
The guy from The Boys that has
yes, right. So I had a dream that all my family had multiple like spider looking eyes and had multiple gills, and I could not wake up. And my mom, it was like they wouldn't run after me. They just kept saying, Jeremy, come here. And they followed me through the house, and all the rooms were the same room. And
did you have?
No, I didn't have gills, but
no,
dude, it's amazing you mentioned that, because I felt in my dream, I was like, no gills. But everybody, in my family, and I remember my mom was cooking a baby boy in the oven in the dream, and she looked at me, and her eyes opened up from her head. They were like, they were closed. It looked like forehead, and then it was like,
and then it opened up
all these eyes, and I was like, oh my god! And then I turned to run, and that punching thing where I couldn't run, and that happens
you
a
were
lot
like
of times
trying
in dreams.
to run,
dude.
But Baywatch.
It was Baywatch. It was, but I remember pushing against the ground, going, why can't I move faster? And she was walking behind me. Jeremy, come here. Jeremy, come here. And I think I thought she wanted to cook me, but it was. And do you know what it was based on? Strangely enough, there's a Porky Pig cartoon from the 70s where he falls asleep and he dreams the fish catches him out of the boat and cooks him. And he has it's about a 15-minute cartoon, and it haunted me as a kid, and it came back in a dream as like my mom cooking kid. Oh, dude, it was.
That's actually a nightmare.
It was a nightmare. And it was all the worst parts of dreams. The slow motion, the haunting stuff, the eyes, because I don't like multiple eyes. And it was fucking revolting. That'll be it for us. Let me end this on a good note. There you go. Sleep paralysis and multiple baby
Enjoy
eyes.
the nightmares, everybody.
We haven't been talking about games for a long time, man.
That's all right. It happens. I keep a dream diary. Highly recommend it. Tadio says, I would say anybody does
used to.
Yeah, it helps. Sometimes having one comes up with ideas, or like Johnny said, dude, I think
you'll
your
start
brain,
dreaming more
the art,
because you remember more.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. For sure. Anyway, that'll be it for us. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it. Thanks for the super chat. It does keep the channel going, and we will see you next Friday or some reviews between then and now. Peace out.